Welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here in Newsfile, as always, we put Ghana first. So as I told you, yes, we will canvass the issues that happened yesterday from the 19 polling station rerun for the Ablekuma parliamentary elections for you. But I'm sure you did observe the sheer paralysis of the police. Some just looked on as the mayhem was visited on people around the place. Journalists were slapped, beaten. They didn't do anything wrong. Why? Samson, he was pushed down, hit on the floor. Another gentleman, the NPP's, one of its officers, the people pounced on him. And the way they went about beating him, as if they wanted to kill him. And you watch the footage, and you are so sad. He just could have been killed. So, what is happening? What happened? And what are the lessons we are supposed to take from here? There's a Kwatia by-election very soon to be had. And after that, in 2028, we'll definitely go into an election. Is this democracy on the brink because of what we are beginning to see? It appears we are perpetuating this kind of thing. And this morning, if you have heard from elsewhere, there are those who are celebrating the mayhem. There are people who are justifying the mayhem and referencing Ayawaso, referencing previous events, referencing people who were killed, unfortunately, in the 2020 elections. So we'll look at all that. You saw a public office holder justify vote buying, which is a crime. Anyway, so before we do that, let's look at the matter of our mineral resource and what is coming up as far as the Black Volta gold mine issue is concerned. In Chapter 21 of the 1992 Constitution, Article 257, Clause 6, it reads, but I read Clause 1 first. Clause 1 says, all public lands in Ghana shall be vested in the President on behalf of and in trust for the people of Ghana. Then Clause 6 says, every mineral in its natural state, in, under, or upon the land, any land in Ghana, rivers, streams, watercourses throughout Ghana, the exclusive economic zone, and any area covered by the territorial, sea, or continental shelf, is the property of the Republic of Ghana. Mark that. Is the property of the Republic of Ghana and shall be vested in the President on behalf of and in trusts for the people of Ghana. And this is the reason we're having this discussion this morning. And as I announced to you earlier, we had arranged to have this discussion earlier in the course of the week with the key players, the two entities that are involved, the Azuma Resources and the EMP. We had agreements, but the government, through the Minister for Lands, made a certain intervention in the course of the week, issued a statement giving a 7-day ultimatum for the two parties to amicably resolve their differences, or else we don't know what the government will do if they don't resolve it. And actually appear to caution them against continuing any public debate, engaging in any public debate. So on the basis of that, as we are advertised, the names you saw on our flyer, they are unable to join us except this researcher who has regularly helped us to bring clarity and the best of understanding to some of the most difficult issues that we are confronted with. Bryce Simmons, thank you very much for making time to join us this morning.
Thank you very much for having me, Samson.
Great. First of all, before, and my viewers know, they are used to the fact that you will first of all try and do some slides and use that to explain the matters to us. And they love it. First of all, why are you so interested in this subject matter?
Actually, those are the first set of slides that I brought.
Thank you very much. So we're going to do that. When he's done, he will take a number of questions, including as raised by engineers and planners in their press release dated the 8th of July, 2025. So let's begin to have a better understanding of the Black Volta gold mine fight. Please, let's have you.
So we're here because there has been a significant amount of disinformation circulating in the ether, as it were, that's made it very difficult for a lot of people to understand what is at stake. Some people have argued, for instance, go forward. Some have argued, for instance, what exactly is my issue, what exactly are the public interest issues, etc. Right. So this presentation will attempt to dispel the disinformation and then lay out very clearly how I got involved, etc. So the problem actually, or rather my involvement actually, starts a bit earlier than this particular incident. It starts with another very similar incident involving engineers and planners. Not too long ago, a few months ago, the government nationalized the Damine mine, which is one of the two main mines owned and operated by one of Ghana's largest gold companies. This company had a development agreement with the government, and typically there are stability clauses in these development agreements. That means that renewals of the leases have for a very long time been considered a formality. For the first time in a very long time, the government decided not to do a renewal and to nationalize. But it gave the company basically weeks.
Nationalize means take over.
Take over the company. But it gave the company literally weeks. And if you've seen a mine before, we're not talking about small infrastructure. Even the decommissioning so that you don't have environmental consequences take many, many months. So you can't give somebody weeks, and then on top of that, the government said national security to the mine. So this was a very bizarre and unusual incident. So I commented about it by writing what is going on. And as an some would say an offhand remark, I mentioned that this issue has optics problems because this particular company, whose mine had been nationalized, its main contractor was a company called Engineers and Planners. And that company has issues with the company. Some of those issues are commercial in nature, but they have resulted in Engineers and Planners having financial challenges. And therefore, if the government isn't careful in the way that it's going about, and it appears as if it's doing something unusual than what typically has been the case, many people could read meanings into it because of the involvement of engineers and planners, which nobody in this country disputes is politically connected.
You got sued for those comments.
Very good. So eventually I got sued. And when you get sued, you do research. As you know, you're a lawyer, right? So you do research to defend yourself. What had I been sued for saying? For saying that the decision by this company, whose mine had been nationalized, had led to financial challenges. There had been financial challenges of engineers and planners because that company had taken decisions, including suspension of mining services, for which EMP is paid to deliver, and therefore any such suspension will have had financial consequences for EMP, etc. So once you get sued and you are doing your research, you try to justify your case. So the issue was to look for evidence of financial challenges at EMP, which I had some evidence, but look for more evidence because you're doing a court defense. In that process, obviously, we started collecting information, but people also hear. So they bring you information, they leak documents to you, because everybody has grievances. Now, the question is that you have to be as a public interest researcher, very good at sifting through to see what are public interest issues, what are just related to your defense in court, etc. So I had found information related to this issue around Black Volta gold mine. Because as it becomes apparent very soon, the dispute around Black Volta gold mine has already been ongoing for a while. So that information, now made available to me, in a way got into, escalated when then somebody else showed information to me suggesting that engineers and planners intended to do a launch event in which it will declare itself as having acquired the mine with money from EBID, which is a regional bank.
The ECOWAS Bank.
So this was very intriguing because I know there's a dispute. I know there's an ongoing live dispute. So how will they organize an event at a hotel in Accra, invite all these dignitaries, and then proceed to announce that they've acquired it. So that is how those issues got to my attention and why I reacted publicly. So the first thing I did was to announce on social media that this is a big problem because this is a mine that is under dispute. Why this launch, therefore? The issues, though, regarding Black Volta are additionally complicated because there are significant public interest issues beyond just what I've just described, beyond my libel-related matters, my research in relation to the libel matters. In Ghana, the government always have shares in every mining company because, as you read in the very beginning, there's a determination for a very long time, in our jurisprudence that we needed to have a situation where the government had significant stakes in all mining activity. So the government would typically own maybe 10% of a particular license area, and the government will get royalties, etc., as well as dividends from the project. So every project in Ghana has some government interest. That's number one. Number two, the bank that was announced as the one that is financing this very important project is the ECOWAS Bank. The ECOWAS Bank is a public bank. It's a public bank to the extent that governments in this country, in this West African region, own shares in the bank. So Ghanaians are a shareholder in the ECOWAS Bank. On top of that, as we will prove very soon, the way the bank itself is structured is very political. All the board of governors are ministers in the region, so it's a political bank. It's also a policy bank. And then underneath them is a board of directors, and all of them are senior civil servants. So in Ghana, there's a gentleman at the Ministry of Finance called Mr. Akest, who is our representative on the board of directors. Every one of them is a senior civil servant. So the decisions that the board have taken, you cannot deny that if the board of directors of ECOWAS Bank has approved this, political exposure or political influence is possible. We are not saying that that is the determinative factor, but we're saying that because a political bank is a policy bank, and its goal is not primarily profit, but to spur development, we are interested in anything ECOWAS Bank does. We do evaluations for World Bank projects in Ghana, IFC, Afrexim Bank. These are all policy banks, and they are politically exposed. And for that reason, it doesn't make sense to argue that transactions involving the ECOWAS Bank are purely private. Lastly, we can also not deny, nobody can deny in this country, that Mr. Ibrahim Mahama, who was the 100% shareholder of Engineers and Planners, which was buying this mine or claiming to have bought this mine, is a person of extreme public interest. People have interest in his affairs because he himself is a political player in the country. It's not just because his brother is the president. If you actually know the politics of this country, you cannot deny that this is a person who regularly involves himself in the politics of this country, often quietly, but still substantially. So if a politically exposed person is buying a mine with money coming from a politically exposed bank, you have to have an interest. It's just impossible as a researcher in natural resources not to have an interest. On top of that, because of the issues in mining for a very long time, the whole world has agreed that mining cannot be treated like any other business. Yes, there are a lot of regulated businesses, banking, telecoms, even healthcare and education. But mining has led to conflict. It's led to so many problems. And those entanglements, blood diamonds, blood minerals, so many problems. Look at the Congo. Most of the wars in the Congo are due to its mineral resource and the way they are managed. So it's something called the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative was created. And that initiative says that governments and companies cannot be the only ones at the table when we are discussing anything mining related. Civil society organizations must be at the table. That is the rule. And Ghana is a member of EITI. There are civil society organizations in this country who, because of that, have access to all information related to mining, every piece of information. Because mining is highly regulated, every decision around hiring, contracting suppliers to provide goods, every single detail is evaluated by regulators. And civil society organizations have a seat at that table. We have the right to request information. We have the right to look into information. It's actually the fact that sometimes we don't actually comply with our own obligations, that these matters become opaque. But other than that, there should be no opacity. So because civil society organizations have a definite interest in all mining and mineral-related activities globally, and Ghana is a signatory to this initiative, I, as a public interest researcher within the civil society movement, had absolute rights to get involved. Thirdly, Engineers and Planners itself, in its own statements, in its own submissions to the arbitration process in London, which I'll get to in a minute, in its own declamations in court in Ghana in relation to this issue, have made it very clear that this is a very politicized project. if you read the statement that they issued when I started commenting about this subject, they were very clear that it's the Minerals Commission itself that have given them a no objection letter to go ahead and take over the mine. Is the Minerals Commission a private organization? It's a state institution.
Correct.
On top of that, they've made it very clear that they will go ahead and acquire the mine, whether or not the shareholders agree. We will come to that in a minute. Now, if you live in a country where expropriation is not in our laws, we don't allow expropriation without compensation, except under very, very, very well-defined, on very well-defined grounds. For a private company to declare that because they have a no objection letter from the Minerals Commission, they will go ahead and do a transaction without the involvement of their shareholder, tells you that there's a political undertone. Because why would the government give them that no objection letter in the face of these disputes? All of that, therefore, means that it was very important that the fact that the ECOWAS Bank had come in, the ECOWAS Bank board chair is a Ghanaian. He has a history of working in the Ghanaian public sector. He used to be at ARB Apex quite a while ago. The current rotating chair of governors is our own finance minister, joined just a few months ago, took over just a few months ago. All the board members are his colleague politicians in the region. All the board of directors of the ECOWAS Bank are civil servants under the control of politicians. ECOWAS Bank does not have an independent governance body, an ombudsman like you see in other multilateral development banks that I can go and complain to if I have an issue. If I have an issue with the World Bank, there's the IEG group. We've been doing all manner of reviews about World Bank projects in Ghana, and I've written extensively, probably the person who has written the most about World Bank projects in a single country in the world. But we have information from every World Bank project because that's a requirement. ECOWAS Bank doesn't have that. So there's a lot of transparency issues when it comes to ECOWAS Bank and such a transaction. Therefore, we have an interest to make sure that underneath it, there aren't any political problems or political influence, etc. And that is why I got involved. So having explained in great detail why I got involved, we now get to some issues around the ECOWAS Bank decision to enter. ECOWAS Bank was entering, and I knew this for a fact, when it already had a history with the project. When in May 2024, it had given a term sheet. A term sheet is simply a high-level offer through EMP, which had then arrived at Azuma Resources, which owned the asset, offering to put money into the mine. And the shareholders of Azuma Resources had looked carefully at what had been offered and said it doesn't meet the terms of the agreement. So ECOWAS Bank had then gone and refined it the next month and brought another offer back, and the company had said no. So there was a history between this bank and this project. That's very important to bear in mind. We also know that long after that, and just before these matters exploded into public limelight, and when this company, the shareholders, got wind of what was happening, they had written to ECOWAS Bank, telling ECOWAS Bank that they are not involved in any transaction and the rest of it. Now, if you have such live disputes, you have a history with the project and understand, therefore, that there is concern about the shareholders. You've dealt with shareholders telling you no before. Then you go behind them, work with the one trying to acquire the mine, fly into Ghana, stage a champagne-fueled event, issue public statements of your support, and then declare that the board of directors has approved the loan. For the board of directors to approve the loan, a number of very critical issues then arise. First, under the rules of the ECOWAS Bank, when you make an application for money, there are a lot of documents you need to submit. Those documents are to facilitate due diligence. Mining is a special category across the world in all banking jurisdictions, especially in the respect of multilateral development banks, such as ECOWAS Bank. Why? Because often the environmental, social, and governance standards are very, very, very high. So you have to do a whole bunch of due diligence, etc. on it. Now, how do you do due diligence when the owner of the assets, who is the one who has all the information and the likes of it, is not participating? Who are you asking critical questions and the likes of it? Unless you are part of a scheme to rip off the mine from the owners, and therefore you don't think the owners are relevant. You only deal with the acquirer. This is a very strange due diligence approach. And because of that strange due diligence approach, we determined that this was a matter in respect of our ongoing mandate to investigate multilateral development banks, which we've been doing for a very long time in this country. So the ECOWAS Bank angle, the event that was staged to allow ECOWAS Bank to make this announcement in a live dispute was so critical to us from a point of view of, the politics of it, that we thought we had to intervene. as I've tried to explain, when Ebert says that the board of directors of Ebert has approved the deal, that can only be at the end of a very long trail of processes. Typically in a bank like that, you have management, staff, even sometimes even junior officers, then it gets to management. You have committees, risk committees. The management itself has risk committees, credit committees, investment committees. While those committees have done their work, etc., they present a memorandum that goes to the board of directors, which has another committee, the risk and credit committee in the case of ECOWAS Bank. They do further evaluation, and then they go to the whole board, which then does an approval. So you are telling me that despite all the information that has now surfaced, all those procedures went through ECOWAS Bank to the point where ECOWAS Bank was then convinced that they had to issue this statement claiming the acquisition had happened. Well, we now know the acquisition has not happened because the shareholders have not sold. If this was not the kind of thing that a researcher who has an interest in multilateral development banks and has written extensively, in my current visiting senior fellowship at ODI, that's been one of the first set of things that I've written about World Bank standards, IFC, etc., etc. You have a situation with mineral resources where CSOs are required to be at the table, and I have done extensive commentary on mining matters in this country, Ake, Talo, Atlantic Lithium, etc. Given this set of circumstances, how possible could I have been quiet? It's not possible to be quiet. Everything about this deal touches on extreme public interest. So now we'll start to tackle the disinformation that has been allowed to cloud the key issues. The first myth is that the investors have been sitting on the assets since 1992, which was in the Engineers and Planners press release, if you read it. Is it true or not? So here is the history. The people that are currently in a tussle with EMP are not the people who discovered the resource. They are not the people who started the process. Long ago in early 90s, in 1992, BHP did some investigation, and somewhere in the Wa-Lora enclave, they discovered a deposit called Kunche. A very, very long time ago. And then they didn't go ahead with it. It wasn't commercially viable enough. About 6 years thereabout, a company called Ashanti IM Gold then rediscovered it, and also did some work on it, and decided it was not commercial and didn't go ahead with it. Years later, a gentleman called David Harper, who has been in this country for quite a long time, and this person himself was in the mining services industry, was basically in the construction, mining and construction industry, decided that this was an interesting prospect, and he set up a company in 2004 called Eagle Hand, or thereabouts. I'm not sure exactly the period he set up Eagle Hand. And then through this Eagle Hand, which was registered in Isle of Man, acquired a company in Ghana, or set up another company in Ghana, which was owned by that company. And in the process, we had Azuma Ghana get set up. Why Azuma Ghana? Because this person was a big fan of our great Zunzum warrior, Professor Azuma Nelson. So that is why he named it Azuma Nelson.
Azuma Resources.
Azuma Resources, sorry. Now, the challenge with this is that typically when you want to go into mining, like most people, when you see an entrepreneurial opportunity, you don't have all the money. But mining is particularly capital intensive. So the process, and it takes a long time to actually develop a mine. So the process has been that you start, and as you move along, you bring money in as the project is de-risked, as more gold is found and it's discovered that you can remove that gold at a reasonable cost and sell the gold and make profit. So in that process, they discovered that they didn't obviously have the resources, and they had to find the resources. To do that, they had to go to the Australian stock market, because it's not easy to get banks in Ghana to loan you for a project that takes 20 years. And I'll come to that also in a minute. So usually it's very difficult if you want to get into a large-scale mining to just move in and with all your money and capital just build a mine. It almost never works. The exploration, the prospecting, all of these things take time. And banks don't want 20-year projects, usually in this country. It's not very often. Occasionally, you may get a bank get involved in gold investment, but it's very rare. So they went to the Australian Stock Exchange. And the way that they went was that he had partners who were providing different kind of services to get the thing going, getting the licenses. Some of them had tenements, that's what we call it, close by, etc., that you can put together to create value that investors will buy on the stock exchange. So they went to the stock exchange, and like I've explained, there were people in this country like Mr. Paula Mwakwata, etc., who were providing sweat equity in the sense that they were doing work for the mine, and because of that, they were getting equity as the thing was listed in the stock exchange. So on the stock exchange, eventually, this is the budget that they put out when they tried to raise the money in Australia, how they were going to use the money. So if you look carefully, you will see that exploration, the different places where they do exploration around Chiripong, Kunche, Nandom, all of those things were listed, administration, etc. And they needed $6 million Australian dollars, which at that time was, maybe $5 million, $4 million, think of the exchange rate that way. So this is the money they needed to get going. But remember, this money will not give you a mine. That's what people don't get. It's not like you go and get 6 million and get a mine. You have to start building value, and over time, people will come in. So these are early investors. The people that are buying these shares that are issued on the stock market in 2006. So the listing began in 2005, 2006 was completed. These people were buying knowing that there's a lot of risk. So the people that started it, when the shares were distributed, you will see that they got about 1/3 of the shares, right? And then these people, who obviously are all foreigners, sitting in Australia, their goal is to bring enough value to investors, other financial advisors. Some of them are clearly working for sweat equity. So these shares were issued to a corporate advisor who has links, etc., etc. And once you've distributed and broken it all down, you get to 62.5 million shares. And the people that started the whole thing, they are getting 21 million shares, about 1/3 of the company. So this is David Harper and all his friends in Ghana, etc., who came together. So this is the original prospectus that was issued. And this was in 2006. So all the way through up to 2006, this is the first time that Azuma comes into the picture. But Azuma under this ownership. Azuma then continues onwards to do more discoveries. So remember that when they started, they had only Kunche confirmed. They discovered Bekpong. They then do a deal with a company called Crew Gold. And Crew Gold also was another struggling mine company. So Crew Gold decided that instead of continue to struggle, they should team up with these people and get shares in the company. So Crew Gold brings Julie and Jenny Josephine, which is their own discoveries that they had. Why are they agglomerating the discoveries?
Those from Singapore?
No, we are not there yet.
Okay.
So what is interesting, people don't realize, is that why are they doing all this agglomeration? The key principle of gold mining, or any mining really, is that if you're going to do a commercial mine, particularly a large-scale commercial mine, you need enough gold for it to be worthwhile. Because the investment to do gold mining properly is so capital intensive, hundreds of millions of dollars sometimes, that if the mine is not very big, what does the big mine mean? It means that the deposit area, thousands of kilometers, and then the actual mine that does the processing, significant enough to process that volume. So you need a large expanse, maybe 1,000 kilometers square, etc., etc. That large expanse and the rest of it, if you have only a small set of deposits, sometimes not enough. So you are doing your best to increase the volume. Why? Because when you then start doing 100,000 ounces a year, you want a mine life of about 7, 8 to maybe 12 years, etc., which is what investors want to see, because then they can get their rate of return. So this is all that is going on. Then somewhere around 2014, they start to increase. So if you look at this point, it started around 220,000 ounces of indicated and inferred resources somewhere in the 90s. By the time they took over, it had increased to about 500,000 based on everything that they knew. By 2010, just before 2010, it had gone to about 1 million. So they are discovering more gold. By 2013, it had gone to almost 2 million resources. What is a resource? A resource simply means that the gold is there, but you don't know if it's economical fully to remove it. When you know it's economical to remove it, we call it a reserve. So you are defining the reserve, and by this point, you now have some confidence to define a reserve, which at that time was about 600,000 ounces. You can see that by the time Ibaira, which is the current company that is in dispute with EMP, by the time they joined in 2017, the defined reserve was 600,000 ounces. This is a very important number because I'll come back to it. So first myth that we've dispelled is that they didn't come in 1992. These companies were trying to find more gold to make it commercially viable. These guys invest in 2017. They invest in 2017, and soon thereafter, the resource goes up to about 2.5 million ounces. And then around 2019, the reserve, which is the one that you are confident you can get, is about 1 million ounces. That means, therefore, that if you produce 100,000 ounces, which today, 100,000 ounces today, a year, today is about $330 million. You can do that for 10 years. So an investor now looks at that calculation, okay, then I can invest 200-something million. You look at some of your expenses and the rest of the processing and all of that, and maybe you get a 20% return every year for about 10 years. Then I get my return back. 2020, they fully acquired it. So when they came in 2017, they invested part of the money to get the project still going, finding more gold, getting all the alliances and all of that work. And then 2020, they go to the stock market in Australia and they do a takeover. They buy all the shares that I told you were issued in 2006. So it's basically 14 years later that this company now becomes the full owner of Azuma Resources. And this company is called Ibaira Capital, which I'll come into in a minute. They set up a special company.
Primary investor,
That's the
capital
primary investor.
investor
It's a fund.
of the business.
It's a fund.
All right.
So Ibara sets up a special purpose vehicle called Ibara. Ibara Capital Group sets up a special purpose vehicle called Ibara to acquire all the assets of the Australian company, which owns Azuma Ghana. But that Australian company that owns Azuma Ghana didn't own Azuma Ghana alone. As I've told you, there are other people that had come in and the rest of it. So by that time, they set up another fund called IGIC, based in Singapore, which then took the rest of the assets, the rest of the shares, so that this company, Ibara, now owns 100%. So when you see IGIC, when you see Azuma Resources Australia, as the shareholders of the Ghana entity, know that Ibara owns both of them.
That's right.
And then there were other projects, as I've told you, it's all about skills. You are looking for projects all the time. So there were other projects we call the Sankofa Gold Prospect, which were owned by 2 other different companies.
And Sankofa is part of this particular agreement.
It's part of this particular agreement.
It's part of this. It's not only the Black Volta.
It's not only the Black Volta.
Right.
And so the 2 companies are Upwest and Phoenix. And Upwest and Phoenix, as I'll show you in a minute, were also owned by Ibara. So through the Azuma Resources. And then by the time that we get to 2022, when they are really getting ready to build a mine because they think they have enough resources, they have hit 1.4 million ounces. And this has continued. Today, they are close to maybe 1.85 million ounces or something like that, because as you do more discoveries, it's improving. As the gold price rises, your reserves that are economical also rise. So you convert more resources to reserves. And the resource now, I think about 3.7 million or something like that. I have to double check. So all the resources that are convertible to reserves, that as you can mine profitably, will also increase as the price stays high. So this was a very detailed history just to dispel the myth that they just came in and blah, 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 and they have not spent any money. Also, they have spent about $40 million throughout the process to do the further work that will take the mine to the level of resource that is profitable. So this is all very important. Now, what is critical for people to bear in mind is that the gold industry or mineral exploration, prospecting, production, etc., is difficult and it's expensive and it's time-consuming everywhere. This is S&P Global's analysis of the average time it takes from discovering a resource or discovering some gold sitting somewhere and then being able to produce it profitably and sell. And if you look at it carefully, you'll see that the average in the world is 15.7 years. In Ghana, we have a mine called Akwase. Akwase was discovered, the main ore body, the main kind of deposit, was discovered in the 90s. And it was only, I think, around 2011, the company called Viking made strenuous effort to try and develop it. They ended up not being able to build, do all the things that they need to do to be able to set up a commercial mine. And they sold it to the Chinese in 2015. So that is almost 20 years later, right? They sold it to the Chinese in 2015. The Chinese company was supposed to pay $10 million, some in cash, some in royalties, a whole bunch of complex arrangement. That money was not paid. So I think around 2017 or so, they took the Chinese company to court. It was only in 2023, from 2015 that they sold the thing. It was only 8 years later in 2023 that they managed to sort out that problem with the Chinese company. And that project is now about to be mined, and there's a lot of concern because the locals are calling the Chinese galamseyers and things like that. How long has that taken? Over 30 years. And that's Akwase, and the Viking story that we know. The same Chinese company owns Akroma and things like that. So it's not surprising that it takes you a long time. Why? The fundamental principle is that you need to aggregate the mine to an optimal size. If you don't have enough resource, you don't build a big mine there to mine and raise a lot of money to mine. It doesn't make sense. And that is partly the reason why, and obviously the infrastructure that you need in order to establish that you have a significant mine is why we have a lot of galamsey, or one of the reasons. Because when you think of the model mine that the Minerals Commission has, what you need to do, very expensive. You are supposed to even have a clinic on the ground. And then you think of all the engineering, etc., that they require. If I have a resource that is the size of Kokomlemle, it may not be enough. If basically the ground on which the scattered deposits are, it may not be enough. So what that means is that a lot of people go into the mining sector unwilling to build a big mine. Right? To build a commercially viable mine. Then it becomes a question whether they will invest in the other ancillaries. You want them to do a proper dam. You want them to treat all the water. You want them to do this. Can they build that infrastructure if the mine is not very large?
Unwilling, or they don't have the finances because it's capital intensive?
It's capital intensive, but also what about the actual land?
Okay.
You need, if I decide that I need, for it to work, I need to sell $100 million of gold a year. How many ounces do I need? I need about 30,000 ounces. How much land do I need to get the 30,000 ounces? will a small-scale miner be able to access that land? You understand? And if you have so many people who also want piece of it, bit and piece of it, how would they allow that mine even to emerge? So you're going to have to deal with all the encroachers. So a lot of people that want to make small money from gold and the rest of it, they are never going to be able to mine satisfactorily. So the notion of environmental compliance in that world is almost impossible. And solving that problem is the policy issue of our day, if you are really going to solve galamsey. And I don't think a lot of people understand the issues around the land scale and the optimal mine size and things like that. So all the things that you need to do in order to be able to mine properly requires a lot of money, which requires a lot of gold, which means that for a lot of the prospects that some of these miners can manage, they are just never going to be able to mine environmentally friendly. And that's why small and community mining has not always been successful. And some people have told you that sometimes when you go there and you look at the so-called community mine, what is the difference between that and the galamsey? It seems that one has a piece of paper. So we need to solve that issue fundamentally.
Right.
And that, there's a thing called Taylor's rule, I'm not going to go into it, that defines this idea of optimality. To find that optimality to move from reserves all the way to the lifetime of the mine to position it. So that scale is the issue. And that is why sometimes it takes time because you have to aggregate the scale before you're able to get to a point where the mine is profitable. So after I've tried to explain, since they took over the mine, the gold that we know is there has grown from over 225,000 inferred resources to almost 4 million ounces in inferred resources. That's almost 20 times. And the reserves have grown from about 100,000, 100 and something thousand to what we know today to be almost 2 million, 1.8 something million. So the question you have to ask yourself is that even if tomorrow they decide they don't want to invest in Ghana again and they leave, what have we gained? We have gained knowledge that there's a lot of gold there and it's commercial. And all the work they have done over those years to give us that knowledge, which now sits in our databases, is valuable. In fact, part of what makes Ghana a mining jurisdiction of note globally, because we know there's commercial gold in place. Some of that work is investors drilling. For instance, in this effort to get this going, they had to drill about, to the first 1 million ounces that I told you, they had to do about 10,000 holes, drill about 10,000 holes in order to find enough resource to make it worthwhile. So in short, the argument that the time it has taken, etc., they've been sitting on the mine, etc., is not true. They've been prospecting and exploring. And this has happened throughout the industry. I'm not making this case as if it's a special case for them. Throughout the industry, a lot of discoveries take many years to get to viability, and it's standard across the industry. So there's nothing there, is what I'm trying to say, for us to look at. So there are other issues which we are better off looking at. The other claim that has been made, and I've heard that made several times, is that somehow the Ibarra itself, the people that own it, there's some kind of split, right? So some shareholders are in dispute, etc., etc. So it's very simple. We just have to look at the structure of the ownership of Black Volta. So Black Volta is right there. Ibarra Capital Fund established Ibarra Capital Fund 1, which is a special purpose vehicle. They set up the IGIC in Singapore. The IGIC acquires Azuma Resources.
100%.
Yes, that's the Australian. They then acquire parts, because Azuma Resources own 53.5% of the Ghana one. They acquire the rest that they didn't own, and they now have 100% ownership. And that company is the one that has the license. But Azuma Ghana also owns Phoenix, and Phoenix has another license, which is another discovery, and they also own Azuma Metals, which I think is a trading company, it's another exploring company. So all in total, what is critical is that you can't ignore these people. Because when you work it, they own the assets. They borrow people.
I'm not supposed to intervene because you are supposed to finish so we have a conversation.
Okay. So but
when you mentioned that there is one license by, Azuma and then another by Phoenix.
Yes.
In the correspondence I have read so far and documentation so far, it is only Phoenix that a license is attributable to.
A license is attributable to
only Phoenix.
You mean like a mining license?
That is right.
Yes, because some of it are reconnaissance, etc., etc. But they are all mineral rights of some kind. They give you a right to do certain things there.
Okay.
Yeah. So for the Walora area, the main deposit and the rest, it used to be a reconnaissance line for a very long time because they were not ready to move into mining because they were doing more discovery to make it viable. Okay. And also they were raising money. Let's be honest about it. So then the ownership structure is also very clear in the agreement that was signed between EMP and the company. You can see that in the EMP agreement and the rest, all of it has been defined, who owns the Upwest one, what kind of rights they have, which is a prospecting license, some have a prospecting license, etc., etc. So all of those structures were very clear in the agreement as to how the power dynamic works. Also, you can see that, like the same discussion that I had with you, the fund that created another fund that created another fund, most of that money actually came from the US, all the way through to the point where you now have ownership of the mine through that integrated structure. So in short, there is no way you can have some dispute among some shareholders, etc., because it all concentrates at this Ibaira entity. And it's a fund. So it has a governance structure. It's not easy to go and do a coup inside the fund. It's much more complicated than that. And the managing partner of the fund is the one that in EMP's press release, they've described in all manner of ways this James World Bank individual. You also see that when you look at all the people that did the signing, on the Kango side, which has the Sankofa prospect, the Caroline Baker was actually just a corporate advisor to Ibaira who signed for them. And everyone who signed on this deal actually just worked for Ibaira. So it's very difficult, when you assign a deal with the owners and you recognize that and you assign that deal, and all of that integrated structure feeds into Ibaira to claim that somehow there's some disputes among the shareholders. It's very difficult to justify. What is also not true is the fact that somehow they got the asset for cheap. They've done no investment, and they are trying to flip it to a EMP for 100 million. And even that, they're not happy because there's somebody sitting on the side. They want to do even more. I mean, the simple fact of the matter is that you just have to look at the agreements, and you will see clearly that a lot of the money was loans that had gone into the company to allow all this exploration work that I was talking about, and its historic liabilities. So the 100 million that EMP was paying was not money they're going to pocket and it will go away. It was money mostly to pay for the loans that the investors had loaned to the company, which had been spent. So they were just recovering the liabilities that they had incurred in that journey. And some of that spending before they came in of almost 80 million, those investors more or less lost money. Because on the stock exchange, yes, they didn't buy it at 80 million or whatever, that those investors up to the point where they did the full acquisition had spent. So a lot of money had gone into it. Some investors had lost money and left. And these people then come in 2020 and spend more money. But they also inherit the liabilities. So the 100 million is not something they're going to pocket and go away. Okay. The other critical structure...
The agreement is very clear that EMP also assumes assets and liabilities.
Very good.
Debt. And actually uses the word debt.
Yes. And much of that is to go to fund the mine. Okay. Because they are still not done.
Right.
They've done all this exploration, but now you have to spend almost $200 million to do the further work that will make the mine possible. So when EMP comes on board, it cannot just simply give them 100 million, your debt and everything, go out, you don't make any profit, and that is it. EMP has to come and invest and grow the mine, and then it gets additional shares as the value of the company goes up because now the mine has been built, and that is the key issue. So EMP's attempt to say, take 100 million and walk away, it's not going to work because that's not how the deal is structured. The deal is structured in such a manner that EMP comes in, assumes the current liabilities and gets some shares, 1/3 each, and then as it builds the mine, the shares vest in EMP based on new shares issued. So it's a journey that they want to go with EMP on this. EMP adds value, the whole asset increases, EMP's ownership increases, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. So EMP saying, I've got money from ECOWAS Bank, take it and walk out. It's never going to work, except they change the commercial intent that they brought to the agreement. Because the initial commercial intent was not like that. Okay. So, the $100 million that EBIT was going to provide and the $130 million that they are talking about, etc., will not do more than just simply pay the existing liabilities in the company. You still need to raise, at least in my view, working capital, construction, etc., at least another $200 million. Okay. If you are going to go and collect $100 million from EBIT to give to someone to clear existing liabilities and raise another $200 million, etc., that person wants profit on their initial investments, and therefore they want additional participation. So that's one issue. So it's very difficult for EBIT to come in, give $100 million to EMP to give to the company, and the matter closes. It will not work because the company wants to now make returns. You see what I mean? So that's the first problem. Right. The second problem is that even after EBIT has given money, that doesn't fund the mine. You need to get almost another $200 million to fund the mine. So, and we know EBIT's capital structure. We know the size of deals it typically makes. You need to bring in other investors, which is why you cannot throw mark at the project. If you throw too much mark at the project, investors will not come in to invest the money and go for it. And that is also why the case has been made that if we are not careful and it looks as if we have just strong-armed and taken that deal out of them, it might get difficult for the mine to ever be developed. And this is a part of Ghana, which is a new frontier for gold mining, Upper West. They didn't used to be known for gold mining.
That's right.
And now we are opening that up for them to also get jobs, potentially if it's mined environmentally sound, in an environmentally sound manner, for them to also get economic activity that is really good. So all these are very critical issues. Then the issue about where the split idea is coming from. Remember the earlier structure I told you. The mine was owned by Azuma Australia, majority share owned. Then they bought Azuma Australia in the stock market, the ASX. Then there were some people who also owned some part of the mine. So they created another fund in Singapore and bought the rest. And now they own 100%.
In fact, if you look at the agreement, there are 6 different entities that EMP enters into the contract with. But you will obviously find eventually that you are dealing with ARA,
which is Australia,
and the
IGIC.
Very good. Right.
And IGIC, as I said, was also owned by Ibaira. Okay. But Azuma Ghana is a Ghana entity. It stands on its own. So even though you have these shareholders, you need to have human beings as directors in the company.
That's correct.
Good. Now, that is where the challenge starts to emerge, where the issue around the so-called boardroom split and things like that, which is accurate, start to come in. What happened was that here are the directors of the company as at now, right? This is very important. So you have Nana Jinmo Bene, Noel Niado, James Warbank, is the one that everybody keeps complaining about from EMP. Hector Ninaku, who was the secretary, Jonathan Hronsky, and Steven Zaninovich. Now, James is the managing partner. He's more or less he's a former BHC Fortescue person who was in mining, created a private equity fund to go into mining. So he is the managing partner. And then these other people work in the fund. These two, the first two, Nana Jimo Bene and Noel Ado, who are prominent Ghanaians, were nominated by EAP when they signed the contract to join Ibaira to develop the mine and clear liabilities. You understand?
Right.
When they signed that contract, they said these two people will represent us. Why did these people allow them on their board? I mean, different people have taken different decisions. But at that time, EMP also wanted assurance that when we come in, we are not going to simply be your boy, right? We are going to be important decision makers as well. So if you are going to go on this journey, they want our people on the board. So these two people were nominated. But when you look at the structure very carefully, in Ghana, typically the secretary is not a member of the board. It depends on the bylaws, but typically the secretary is not a member of the board.
That's right.
These 5 are the members of the board. And these 5, 2 are with Mr. Ibrahim Mahama. So the board is split because he nominated those people, and there's no doubt about that because that has not changed. But the key principle in corporate governance is that usually the shareholders are dominant because they appoint the directors. So worst case scenario, you do an AGM and you remove the directors. And that is possible. Of course, now it's incumbent in the courts. So ultimately, you have to ask yourself, who has the ultimate control in this matter? And that's the ultimate issue in corporate governance. The other issue is that because of the way the thing was set up, and EMP was now responsible for the technical, because remember that the whole point was that EMP comes as a strategic partner. Right. That's the technical work, help raise money, and let's not mince words. In 2022, when this thing started coming up, and we started having discussion, by 2023, the company was already had a prospectus out all over the world, praising the fact, or rather, hyping the fact that they had a big mining service contract from Ghana involved, and therefore that de-risked the project, etc., because there's some kind of strong local participation and strong government endorsement. So the truth of the matter is that at that time, we were very happy to have EMP on board. And we'll discuss in a minute why that changed. But when EMP then came up and set up the bank account for the company, the newly reconstituted company, because the company now had a new board, etc., the bank account that was set up, only these two people were the signatories, the EMP people. So the EcoBank account that was set up to move the project for the joint effort forward, only the two people who are EMP people were signatories. And a lot of the spending that went through that account is what EMP is claiming is this 4 million in some documents and 5 million in some statements they've spent. So that money that they've spent, the argument of the other side, which I have cross-corroborated to a very significant extent, is that that money has been spent on activities related to EMP. For instance, there is evidence that at the very least about $500,000 was wired to the law firm that is currently defending EMP. Is currently prosecuting EMP's case before the tribunal, the arbitral tribunal, in the courts in Ghana, which is this law firm, Robert Smith Group, owned by Mr. Boardroom. So if you take just common sense, it's unlikely that such expenditure from the bank accounts could have been authorized by the Azuma side, simply because most of that work for that law firm has been in opposition to their interests.
But in the contract, in the agreement,
yes,
there are specifically detailed situations where certain expenses will be on the account of EMP, and certain other expenses will be on the account of ARG.
Very good. Now, the challenge is that the ARG account was controlled by EMP. So when EMP said we spent this amount of money, they dispute that was spent in their benefits. Because that expense, most of those expenses that they have been able to reconcile, and I've seen some of those banking documents because we are also insiders in the bank, it does appear to suggest, and the issue about the law firm one is very clear, that it doesn't appear that was to advance the project in any way. Okay, so that's the confusion.
So where are we now, and what's the way forward?
So how we go forward is very simple. You just have to read the agreement very carefully, as you've done, and it's very clear that where they started with the agreement is not where EMP wants to go. Where they started with the agreement is that clear the liabilities that we have, almost 100 million, bring about 160 to 200 million more, depending on how it goes, an estimate. And based on that, we build the mine. But you build the mine. You enter into an EPC contract with the company to build the mine because they want to tie you to the cost. So when you say this is the cost, etc., you execute on that cost. And then secondly, they want you to do the civil works, obviously related to the mine. Now, if all of those things are done, you get shares as it progresses. That's basically the deal. So my view is that EMP has changed mind about that structure, probably because there's no more trust and the relation is not good. So if that's the case, they need a new agreement. Because the company proposed to have terminated the agreement in December of 2024. And I've written to you, which we've seen, that they send you that termination. But before then, you had gone to arbitration to try and preempt it. But in the arbitration, you don't preempt termination and arbitration. In Ghana, you get an injunction, but that injunction just preserves the status quo. The injunction cannot force the company to continue to deal with you. It just simply freezes the situation as it is. But to go forward and build a mine and raise money and all of those things, there has to be a new agreement. And that new agreement must satisfy the commercial intent of the parties. What do they really want to do? Do they want to create a situation where they take some money from EMP and walk away? Or do they want to take money from EMP and still work with EMP to build a mine? We cannot have a situation where the two don't have a meeting of minds. That matter must be addressed. And they have to sit together and ensure that they don't further inflame the situation, which is why I think the event was totally misguided. Because the effect of the event was to do three things. One of them was to declare a fait accompli. Oh, we've acquired the mine, end of story. Second, it does some very worrying things. It says things have happened that the other party who owns the asset has never agreed to. So it's a strong arming tactic. I've never agreed to take 100 million and walk away. I've not agreed for you to take the 100 million and then give it to me to walk away. I've said that raise the money on the books of the company, Azuma Ghana. Not you take the money and give it to us to walk away. Raising the money either you raise the money on the book of the company as the debt, or you borrow the money and you invest it as equity in the company. But until we see the money in the company, essentially a bank account that we control as controlling shareholders, we cannot consider the deal consummated. So if that is not what the expectation is, and you do a launch purporting that you've overridden that clear commercial intent, then you break trust. So the trust in the relationship is what must be repaired. And now that they are at arbitration, there are 3 legal proceedings underway. There is arbitration in London, which EMP initiated, and that was initiated before the termination. Then after the termination, they went to court to get contempt proceedings. And then after they did, initially before they went to court to get for the contempt proceedings, they had already also issued an injunction. And the injunction is to preserve the status quo. But all it does is that it means that nobody can move. So how do you issue an injunction saying that I don't want my rights to be prejudiced? And then you go ahead and make an announcement that you've acquired the mine and you have a financier, etc. How does that work?
We can interrogate that once you are done and sit down, because the injunction could be that they got the injunction, so they are able to proceed, unless the terms of the injunction say that both parties are stopped.
Okay, but the injunction was specific things the other parties not to do. The injunction was not an enabler for EMP to continue to do things regardless of the agreement. So we read the injunction. So you have the injunction, we'll look at that. In short, you have a situation where there was a deadline for EMP to pay $50 million in 30th June 2024. They couldn't meet that timeline. They argued that the things they needed to do that was not agreed to by the other side. The other side said, well, the term sheets you brought didn't meet the requirements, so I couldn't have accepted it. It was not what we had agreed in the agreement. There was also the EMP contract, which was supposed to be an EPC contract, engineering, procurement, and construction contract, which could not happen. And that is literally where we are. Now, why should we be more neutral and objective in this matter rather than just support the Ghanaian national champion, EMP? Sometimes tough love is needed. After assessing all the details, my conclusion is that it's EMP that has departed from the initial commercial intent, as expressed in the agreement, which I've read. The way the agreement was structured, etc., is not the way EMP is proceeding. And how do I know that? It's based on the IBID signing ceremony. The ECOWAS Bank signing ceremony purpose to force the company to accept a fait accompli that departs from the clear intent of the two parties, commercial intent of the two parties in the agreement. And to my mind, that has inflamed the situation.
The agreement allows EMP to go look for loans, including from a place like the ECOWAS Bank.
Very good.
And they have done so. And in fact, you will read from the documentation that this party has been once involved in approaching the bank so that collectively they approach the bank to get the loan.
Very good. So you approach the bank in 2024, May, and you say, this is a project we have. A bank will normally do two levels of due diligence, right? One on the person borrowing, the borrower, and the other on the project.
Right.
The reason why the project due diligence itself is important is several-fold. For example, there are places and industries and contexts, etc., that ECOWAS Bank is not allowed to invest in. They're not allowed to invest in, for instance, banned pharmaceutical products. They're not allowed to invest in diamonds for which a country does not have the... If you are mining a country that is not part of Kimberley process, ECOWAS Bank cannot invest in that project.
Right.
So the project due diligence is very critical. And in this case, when they decided to invest in the project, they issued a term sheet in May 2024 to the company through their client, which is the EMP. Their client is EMP, so that's understandable. The company looked at it and said, doesn't meet the agreement we've signed with your client.
Okay.
So we cannot proceed.
Right.
So my argument, therefore, is that so long as that was the history, it's very bizarre for there to have a situation, or for there to be a situation, where then they proceed to go and announce a fait accompli takeover.
Okay.
That would merely inflame
Thank you very much, Bright Simmons. And Bright Simmons is the Honorary Vice President of Imani Africa, who has just done the presentation for us to try to bring all of us to, speed as to his understanding deeply of the circumstances that have led to the EMP and Azuma Resources, agreement in respect of the Black Volta gold mine. And of course, like I mentioned earlier, and Bright also intimated, this is not only about the Black Volta gold mine, there is also a Sankofa one included, and that's the agreement they entered into. Now, I'm going to ask him a few questions for clarity, and then we will take a break and return to the Ablekuma North. But before I do that, I will start by reading at least up to paragraph 10 of the statement issued by engineers and planners. It's dated the 8th of July 2025, and it says that they want to tell the story of the acquisition of Azuma. 1. The government of Ghana gave a lease to Azuma Resources Ghana Limited in respect of a gold concession in the Upper West region in 1992. The company is owned by an Australian company. 2. From 1992 till 2022, the company was unable to commence any significant exploration activities on the land, contrary to the terms of the lease agreement. 3. By 2022, the company was indebted to the Ghana Revenue Authority and Minerals Commission to the tune of over $5 million. There's evidence to back that. The Ghana Revenue Authority, we have cited documentation, including suits and demands that were made. And I think maybe the final demand may have been made on the 20th of September 2023. And I'm looking at a GRA letter written to Azuma Resources Ghana Limited and demanding payment of their outstanding tax liabilities in the sum of over $2 million and 123, almost 24,000 Ghana cedis as penalties continue to accrue. Number 4, they say that the Ghana Revenue Authority had obtained a judgment in both the High Court and the Court of Appeal against the company and was going to sell the assets of the company. 5, the gold price was low, and so the owners of the company wanted to sell what was left of the company and for the new owner to deal with all the risk with GRA and the Minerals Commission. 6. Additionally, the political instability in neighboring Burkina Faso posed an elevated risk for any more investment in that sub-region. 7. In May 2023, the shareholders approached EMP, offering to sell the project to EMP for $100 million. If you hear about an agreement or contract that we have referred to from the start until now, that is what we are referring to. That is also a fact. But as Bright Simmons says, it appears that there is a certain misconception of the nature and the terms of the agreement. It is not take $100 million and walk away and let us take over the whole project. And that is what he understands the engineers and planners to be saying. That is the agreement. We'll interrogate a bit of that shortly. 8, EMP accepted the offer and the risk, despite the value of the project being estimated at less than $80 million. The project acquisition and development agreement was signed by the shareholders of Azuma and EMP on the 9th of October 2023 at the Roman Ridge, Accra offices of EMP. It was important for the company to dispel the claims that because John Mahama is president, he's helping his brother to strong arm, as it were, Azuma Resources and to take over what duly belonged to them. They want to show by the evidence, which we have seen, that this contract or agreement predates the Mahama administration that you see now. It was in 2023. 10, per the agreement, the $100 million was to be paid in 2 equal installments. Bright has referenced that, of USD 50 million on or by June 2024. And then they introduce in June 2026. They refer at 11 to email correspondence between the parties that the first installment of June 2024 was amended to December 31, 2024. I can say that I have seen the email correspondence that corroborates the fact that it is not accurate to suggest that by June, if they had failed, they couldn't proceed any further, because in fact, there was email exchanges that appear to amend the terms and allow them up till December of 2024. Per the agreement, EMP immediately took control of the project and funded the operations of the mine on an average of $500,000 US monthly from November 2023 to date, and the last expenses were June 30, 2025. Per the agreement, EMP appointed 2 representatives, Bright has spoken about that, to the board of directors of Azuma Ghana in January 2024. Per the agreement, EMP was responsible for raising finance to develop the project. Yes, they were, according to the agreement. Indeed, 15, a top executive of the shareholders of Azuma from Australia accompanied officials of EMP to Lomé, Togo, to visit and hold discussions with the ECOWAS Bank towards the project acquisition and development. I think I'll pause here. And then on the back of the presentations that you have made, you make the suggestion that first, that about the ownership, that if you look at the power, structure, the agreement gives EMP, it doesn't look like what EMP is seeking to do is what the agreement is about. But when you look into the agreement, from the very beginning, from the conditions precedent, you will read that the agreement gives EMP absolute control.
Let me
correct?
The agreement.
Yeah. It gives them absolute control.
We are not speaking
in no uncertain terms.
So the agreement, you said which part of the agreement?
I'll refer the specific portion to you as we discuss. Okay. But I want to know, that or is that not the case?
No, that's not true, because when you look at the interpretation section of the agreement, it's very clear that the intent of the parties is to pay a consideration that clears existing liabilities and going forward to raise financing to develop the mine. And the vesting schedule of the shares in EMP is tied to the EPC contract, which is fundamental to the agreement. In fact, the EPC contract is so fundamental that without entry to the EPC agreement, you cannot have an agreement of this nature consummated. So when you go into the agreement, the background,
if you look at 2.3.2, it says that EMP shall have the exclusive rights.
2.2.
Yes, 2.3.2.
Completion of sites, civil and earthworks.
Yes, that's stage 2. That's stage 2.
I mean, is it section 2.2?
Yes.
Okay, and then stage 2.2.
No, I'm at 2.3.
2.3.
Yes, that's stage 2, which is project financing and completion.
Okay, but you are jumping a whole set of things.
Yes, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
It says that
2.3.
EMP shall have the exclusive right to procure or provide the necessary project finance.
No, I have stage 2, project financing and completing of project construction. So 2.1.
Exactly.
So the parties acknowledge that the development of the Black Volta project.
That's correct. So I'm referring to 2.3.2. Right. Subject to clause 2.3.7, prior to 30 June 2024, EMP shall have...
Which clause you are referring to?
So that's the clause I'm referring to. 2.3.2.
Okay. Subject to clause 2.3.7, prior to 30th June 2024,
right. EMP
shall have the exclusive right to procure or provide the necessary project finance. Essentially, it's your duty. That's what it's saying. When it comes to finding money for the mine, it's your duty. You are exclusively responsible.
Yes.
Okay.
For end, I think here they wanted to write end, and they made an error by saying an.
Shall have the exclusive right to procure or provide the necessary project finance for and on behalf of Azuma Ghana. So the money is
Black
coming.
Volta project.
That's very important. The money is coming for Azuma Ghana, and you are doing it on behalf of Azuma Ghana. Okay.
Right.
And then either by way of equity or debt financing. So that's a very important point. Of Azuma Ghana, or by way of equity or debt financing of EMP, with EMP investing such financing in Azuma Ghana as equity but not as debt.
Right.
That is fundamental. You are not allowed to do anything except the money comes to Azuma. And when the money comes to Azuma, if it comes through you must invest it as equity. If it's coming directly as debt, it must come into Azuma. That is so fundamental that if you ignore that and you go around and whatever, you are just wasting your time.
Right.
So if they want to change that mechanism so that now it's assumed EMP has to go and raise money and buy, then the price will change.
How do you reconcile that with background?
Yes, okay.
In F, it says, in consideration for the payment of the $100 million US, IGIC, ARA, that's Azuma Australia, and Cango have agreed for EMP to acquire all their respective interests,
debt and equity,
in the companies which own the projects
on the terms set out in the agreement. So the $100 million consideration gives you a right. It's almost optionality. It's an option. It's an embedded option. You get the $100 million, you pay it, now you are in the game.
You acquire all their respective interests, debt and equity.
On the terms set by this agreement. So how you acquire it, you pay the $100 million, and then how you acquire all your interests set out in the agreement is now specified very clearly, as you've read. It's specified as to what stage we shall issue shares to you. So if you go to 2.2, it says the stage 1 shares shall be issued to EMP by Azuma Ghana as follows. 1/3 of the estimated number of stage 1 shares shall be issued to EMP when DRA Global have certified to the project board, which is controlled by Azuma, remember that, to the project board that 1/3 of the site civil and earthworks of value, because they want to tie everything. So you don't go and do something and then you come back and say, have been completed.
Right.
So you only get that when so and so happens. If they wanted to simply take 100 million and walk away, they will not tie you to get 1/3 of the shares when you do the value. So the way it has happened is that there are some issue shares, which is valued at a certain amount with debt and equity. Then as the mine grows in value, because you are building a mine. Remember this time, there's no mine. So they're just deposits. So you build a mine that can now dig out the gold, process the gold, and export the gold. When you've done that, the value of the company goes up again, and then you get 1/3.
Thank you. Let me go to my next question.
Let me explain for people to understand very well. Say you pay 100 million, then you spend 60 million further to do 1/3 of the civil works. All of a sudden, the company's value, this being just very naive, the company's value has now gone up to a certain percentage, right? Let's say it's gone up to 200 million. Now you own 1/3 of 200 million. So you've earned almost 70 million now of the shares of the company. You need to understand the agreement you signed. Is the point I'm trying to make.
Right.
And the nature of the agreement is that it's a vesting schedule. You do some work, you get your shares.
I get
it's
that.
Not buy 100 million and walk
I get that explanation to my question.
Very good.
Now, the next point I get you to is 2.2.1.2.
Okay.
In your presentation, I didn't hear you suggest that. I heard you talk about they are funding civil works and all. But here, you see that from 1st of October 2023, EMP is supposed to fund all exploration. So it is not as if this is cooked and they are seeking to take over, but they are funding all exploration.
So we just have to start. Where did the project start? In the 90s. How many resources were there? How much gold was there? 200 and something thousand resources indicated and inferred. Simply meaning that we think that's the amount of gold there. Proven reserves at that time, maybe 120,000. By the time this company that we are talking about, Ibarra, showed up, the reserve, the proven reserves was about 600,000 ounces. So somebody else had grown the resource base by 5 times. Then they come in 2017 and they continue. By the time EMP comes in 2023, how much gold had been found? Over 1.8 million. So they are taking it from around 600,000 to 1.8 million. So they have tripled it. Since EMP came in, what reserves have they defined? 0. Because they haven't done the work they were supposed to do. Ask Mr. Benson, who you are communicating with, to send you the defined resource based on their exploration since they came in. 0. So all the value in the company, the way we're marking is very simple. Is you have a ground line there. There's some gold somewhere around. You dig. Once you've dug out the gold and you made all these holes and the rest, you kind of try and calculate what's the grade. You determine a cutoff grade. By determining the cutoff grade, you look and start to determine what's the recoverable reserves, how much of the gold you can get out. And then that's how you start to define your reserves. But you start off with the indicator resources that you think is there.
Okay.
Now my argument is, the company, by the time the 2023 EMP came in, the company had defined all the reserves that is driving the value of the asset. I'm not saying that EMP is not going to add value. It's going to add tremendous value by building the mine. The problem with the investors have is that is the part that EMP doesn't seem to be focused on. But the only value they can add now is the $200 million or so investment that builds the mine. Not paying them $100 million to say walk away. It's like, no, come and add value.
Okay.
And if you do and you add value, the mine is now built. The value of the company goes tremendous. I've seen that in their company. They suggest that the value of the company was about 80 million.
That's right.
How can it be 80 million when the inferred, the reserve, the proven reserves at that time was over 1.6 million ounces? How can it be? Because
thank you. I needed to move on here.
You just have to do a discounted cash flow analysis to see that the company was worth way more.
I needed to move on here, and because you mentioned Bobby Benson, Bobby actually did send me a question. I haven't asked that question yet. He sent me one question. I'll ask that question.
I also have to spell one last.
But wait. Yes. My reading, and as you can see, the documents I have here, I've highlighted portions for this particular discussion. And it became more important when I discovered after the minister issued his statement and the other two parties decided to back out.
Which was a helpful statement, except the ultimatum.
Yeah, they backed out of the conversation that we're having today. But let me make
one last dispelling of myth, which is that the view is that all these changes are happening because the gold price changed. The termination happened before the spike in gold prices.
Okay.
It happened in December 2024. The spike in gold prices was in
You
sought
to question the due diligence done by the ECOWAS Bank. and actually seem to suggest some sort of compromise or some sort of, is it a collusion to try to support one party against the other?
No, I think that they were colluding to disinform the public. That's my view.
Okay. That information, how do we are unable to independently say that what you're saying is fact?
No, because
except that you are taking from the fact that
yeah.
there was litigation ongoing.
Yes.
Whilst they were working on the loans.
I start off from the fact that the ECOWAS Bank is very familiar with the Azuma Resources entity, because they had made an initial offer in May 2024, which was rejected. Then your client comes back and says they didn't agree. You issue another one the subsequent month. Send it back to them. Your clients come and say, people are not agreeing. Then 6 months later, there's a termination. By ethical business practice, if this was a live engagement, a live transaction, because you are trying to work with your client to do it, your client will have told their relationship manager that, look, they've terminated the agreement, we are in arbitration with them, etc., etc., etc. So if in July 2025, without any of the matters resolved, pre-legal proceedings, contempt proceedings in Ghana, injunction proceedings in Ghana that have concluded, arbitration, if despite all of this, you don't have any evidence of settlement, and then you come in and you say the board of directors of ECOWAS Bank has approved a loan to acquire the black gold Volta mine, then you know something we don't know. Okay. Then what you know, the only thing you can know we don't know, somebody has assured you.
It's their business decision.
Okay. But that business decision does not inform the company.
It's their business decision. Because they find that there is an agreement subsisting between engineers and planners and these other entities. 6 of them, albeit we have isolated, it comes down to 2. And engineers has committed funds into the project thus far. Into their own bank account for their own purposes. Because that's the evidence I have seen. If they have other evidence, I have a standing request to engineers sent directly to their president, their owner and their chairman, to send him information which contradicts anything I've said in public. I've actually met him and made the same offer. I've not received a single document. What I have seen suggests that all the money they claim they've spent, the $500,000 a month and the rest, was for purposes related to their own affairs, including paying Mr. Bobby Benson very well. About $500,000. The first $500,000 I've seen is there. I think I've seen another one that suggests he must receive almost $1 million from the company. So rather than funding the mine, they are busy funding legal warfare. And my argument is that cannot be said to be adding value to the mine. We are only interested in Ghana that you grow the value of the mine, so the mine can create jobs. In terms of the expense they have made into the project,
they said they have got a hell of
the amount of legal fees pales into insignificance. So let's not focus on that.
But the point is that they have not spent the money to advance the terms of the agreement. The things that they were supposed to do in the agreement are very clear.
Sitting here, I don't have that evidence. I'm looking at the face of the contract.
You have the agreement
and the processes.
Wait, you have the agreement, right?
Correct.
You know what they were supposed to do in the agreement?
Yes.
Okay, how much of it have they done? Have they given you any evidence to show how much work they have actually done? That corresponds to
they have a statement which they have shared with the public.
But I'm asking
you
whether in that
what they have done.
In that statement, the site and civil works, which you read yourself very carefully, have they advanced it and by how much? Have they done any exploration and what resource or reserves have they defined by that exploration? Those are the things you must ask them. Because you see, you sign an agreement that says you do certain things to advance the project. What are we interested in Ghana? We have a big gold mine, produces gold, generate royalties of $150 million, create jobs of about 1,000 for people in Upper West region to do well. You go into the agreement as ENP. You are one of our national champions. People respect you greatly. We want you to go and add value to the project so the mine becomes more valuable. It generates more royalties for the country. It creates more jobs in Upper West. What spending have you done that takes that forward? These people have shown us a record. I specifically sent you the Australian Stock Exchange information. Because they were a public company at some point, we know from 2006 to 2020, all the investments they've made to try and grow the value of the asset. I showed you where they took it from, 100 and something thousand in declared reserves, to about $1 million in declared reserves. This company, people have taken it to about 600,000 declared reserves. This company has taken it forward to about 1.6 million declared reserves. How many additional gold have ENP discovered to add to the reserves? How many, what other civil works have they done to take us closer to the mine?
If you got information that clearly the agreement stated that the finance for the development, not the acquisition, will be raised on the books of Azuma Australia and by EMP. I understand that at the first meeting between all the parties, the ECOWAS Bank was of the view that their books are bad.
The company's books are bad.
So EMP should raise the project development finance on EMP's books.
Okay, but that would be very interesting if there was a document to support it. Two documents. One is some document from ECOWAS Bank that suggests that they thought Azuma Resources can never raise money on their books. And then secondly, evidence that shows that Azuma Finance's books were very bad compared to mining companies in that stage. Because I know, that's what we do. We research. I just
so as I understand, the change of events, the change of events
yes.
is that beyond the terms you see in the contract,
yes.
because it was discovered that their books were bad and could not support the loan, and EMP's books were to be used to support the loan.
Because they have the balance sheet.
EMP then, in every business sense, will then say,
okay,
why not?
So let's
why
take
not?
it one by one.
I just buy you out,
no, let's take it
so
one
to
by
speak.
One.
Because if I'm raising the funds on my books...
First of all, we need to validate these points, right? And to be helpful if those documents were made available. To show that EBIT had done that evaluation, concluded the books of Azuma Ghana was not very good, etc. Secondly, Azuma Ghana was backed by shareholders that have raised tens of millions of dollars publicly, Ibarra Capital. A company like Azuma Ghana is a shell. The real value of a company like Azuma Ghana is driven by its shareholders. And Ibarra Capital had raised money in the US from very sophisticated institutional investors, which showed it had capacity. So I would like to see the analysis that was done to conclude that you couldn't do it on Azuma Ghana's book. But the most important of all of this is that means that EMP had changed their commercial strategy. They had decided that this thing that we signed, that will raise money in the books of Azuma Ghana, it doesn't work for us anymore. So the right thing you do then to maintain trust is you say, look, we have to renegotiate the agreement.
But this was obvious, was it not?
Yes.
Azuma Ghana, they were broke. They couldn't pay.
No, but they
couldn't pay their tax liabilities.
True.
It was EMP that had to assume all of this.
Had accrued before a private equity fund came in. Remember that. That's why I gave you the history. By 2017, before Ibarra started to come in, of course, Azuma Ghana was very stressed, and they already owed all of these mineral commission fees and whatever, and they were made that public. That, but they were raising money, and the stock exchange in Australia was not very favorable to juniors.
My point is that doesn't that suggest
so important,
you?
Let me explain things. So on the frontier, these are junior explorers on the frontier, and the stock market in Australia was not being very favorable in raising money. So they were struggling.
Okay.
And in 2018, they already started to talk about having to bring in money. That is why they brought in a private equity fund. That's what private equity funds do. So the private equity fund came and said, okay, I'll enter into the agreement by giving you some money to sort your issues out as you go forward. And then eventually the private equity fund thought that, okay, the gold is actually there. So they took over the company. Private equity funds with sophisticated institutional investors in the United States, including the New Jersey government, etc., has backing. So if you are doing an evaluation of the company, you will not evaluate just Azuma Ghana. Secondly, when the issues, the liability that accrued before Ibarra came on board, when that matter was going to be resolved, yes, EMP intervened in the proceedings at GRA and Minerals Commission. We must ask, though, why EMP has that influence. Anyway, they got some waivers waived, some penalties waived. We must ask again how they have that influence, because they themselves claim it. Once they got those penalties,
they're doing business.
Well, but I'm saying that
they're doing business. And if they have experts and technical people, lawyers who can go to this, tax people, and get to beat down their costs because they have assumed this debt, why not?
Ultimately, the company paid the tax liability and disputed. They were disputing some of it, and they had lost in the tribunal. So for them, they were convinced that some of it was not right, and EMP got those parts that they were convinced was not right waived because of EMP's influence. But don't make the mistake that the fact that the company was broke started with Ibarra. Ibarra acquired a company that was broke, which is very common across the gold industry. Why did Viking sell to the Chinese? There are so many tax deals around where most gold companies that are small get stressed. Somebody comes in and enter into the agreement. So the private equity fund that is backing it is what you must look at, not Azuma Ghana, because of its history. Is it clearer?
The minister's statement, we barely have time. We've done over an hour. We've done about an hour and 20 minutes.
The statement was valid in the sense that the government owns shares.
This is what the minister said.
Yeah.
I refer to your earlier correspondence, and the minister was writing to James Worldbank,
who's the chairman, managing partner of Ibarra.
Who, as you understand,
whose fund owns the assets.
Yes, yeah. Who, as we understand, and you try to dispute that appears to be the one posing a problem.
Oh, it's possible that he's
otherwise, there's actually no problem. Because all other...
He set up the fund that owns the assets. So if you're having issues with him, you have to resolve the issue.
So the minister wrote to him and said, I refer to your earlier correspondence in respect of the above subject matter, as well as the various press releases and public statements that have since been issued concerning the dispute. In light of the circumstances, I have decided to grant the parties a final period of 7 days within which to resolve the matter amicably. Should this period elapse without a mutually agreed resolution, a decision shall be taken in the best interests of the country. I strongly urge all parties to refrain from addressing this matter through the media and instead focus on constructive dialogue and responsible engagement. Consequently, the Minerals Commission is directed to facilitate and support the parties in resolving their differences in order to ensure timely commencement of the project. You say the only way forward you can see is a new agreement.
No, first of all, a new commercial strategy, a new understanding of what business they want to do together. Are they still do they still trust each other enough to partner to build a mine? Or has the trust been broken, but these people are willing to exit and let Mr. Ibrahim take over? That has to be the first thing you resolve. Because if you don't resolve that, you cannot do any proper enhanced mediation. You have to first decide, is the original intent, which is you come in, you put some money to reduce our liabilities that we've already spent, to give you a right to participate. It's a right to participate. Now you have the right to participate, you help us build a mine. Is that still the intent? If that's not the intent, they should just do a new agreement, right? That reflects the new intent.
But this is a right of participation.
Yes.
That has an end in sight.
Yes.
And the end in sight is that EMP will own all the interests of these parties.
Yes, but the companies will exit at a higher valuation. You understand? So you put in more money to increase the valuation, you get 1/3. You put in additional money, the valuation of the company goes up again, you get another 1/3. And then finally you get a full 1/3. So by the time you've done that, the full valuation of the company will be higher, so their exits will be more valuable. Nobody comes and spends 6 years and assumes liabilities and then spend about 40 million on project work and then leave with nothing.
So we have had people criticize the minister's intervention. You say that this intervention is helpful.
The ultimatum is a problem. The dates, because this is a thing that has been going on for months, and you have one leg of proceedings in Ghana, one leg in London. You can't give them 7 days. What you can say is that the government is actively interested in the whole of Upper West, become one of our major gold hubs. The north of Ghana is one of the areas where we have intense policy interest to see transformed. Therefore, I want you to finish, speed up your resolution matters, and I will facilitate that. But the minister has to address a problem, which he says the Mineral Commission should be the one that does. But it's the Mineral Commission that EMP claims on their side has issued a no objection letter to go and take over. And we also know that there are people, senior executives at the Minerals Commission.
Can we not easily understand? Can we not easily understand the government side? They say the project must be given the opportunity to start. You, as in
but you don't have the project
you, as in Ibarra or whoever they are, you have been at this project since 1992.
But that's not correct. They have not. They acquired the project fully in 2020. And I've shown you that in the average in the world.
No, that's the intervention by Ibarra.
Yes, but Ibarra does not respond for whoever it is that used to own the assets. And I've shown you that there are
isn't that a sign that these guys are just wasting everybody's time?
Enough gold.
And if somebody has been able to procure $100 million that helps us to proceed quickly, we just jettison them and move on.
The average period in the world is almost 16 years to get to a point from discovery to production of the mine.
We've done 20 years plus,
Very
right?
Good. And that 20 years has increased the value of the mine to Ghana. So now everybody knows that Ghana has this amount of gold sitting there. If you take just the contained gold, there's a naive analysis. You have gold almost 2 million ounces. At today's price, that's almost $7 billion. When the gold was discovered at Kunche, there was nothing.
All right.
So that value has increased to Ghana's benefit.
Okay.
So the minister needs to take away the ultimatum, but facilitate a new meeting of minds with a new commercial strategy. What is the right way, given the history of these two parties? Can we craft something that potentially takes away the mistrust? Because it's mechanical, legal technology. What kind of clausing and things like that and party you bring in, etc., that ensures that they can still trust each other to work for it? Or one of them may change their mind that, okay, I don't want to work together with you, but pay me and let me go out.
My producers have told me how many times now that we need to end this discussion here, unfortunately. But Bright, the very last one.
Yeah.
If you got to know, and I suppose you will, that in 2023, as they do this process towards 2024, even the Minerals Income Investment Fund, MIF,
Yes.
seeks to support Ibrahim Mahama with the first 50 million that is required. And he declines, or the EMP decline, because they don't want to have anything to do with government.
Well,
because of his relationship with the president, even at the time when they were in opposition, he does this. But do you still, with this knowledge, do you still have the suspicion of some, overriding and overbearing, posture or capacity over the regulatory agencies?
Well, EMP is the one that tells us that they have this influence over regulators. Something that they are taking offense to and sued me over. I don't know who advised him to do that suit. But on top of that, the situation is the way that the agreement is written does not allow you to go and take money and come and do an acquisition. It says come and invest in the company, on the books of the company. Or if you take the money that way, then do an equity transaction. Maybe because the company itself was also worried about these kinds of issues, which is why they wanted the transaction to be done in Azuma Resources rather than EMP. Whatever be the case, three things are important for us. Mineral resources in Ghana are public matters. Therefore, we have a right to intervene. The north of Ghana and its development through mineral resources, a new strategy for the development of the north. In the past, they didn't have minerals, and we used to argue that that's why the colonialists ignored the north. Now, the north is going to have minerals. We want that to happen. For that to happen, they need to raise a lot of money, not just 100 million. They need to raise at least 300 million in total. To raise that kind of money, they need to stop the current confusion. ECOWAS Bank's entry to claim a fait accompli doesn't help that. The government should now facilitate a situation where they come to a meeting of minds and come to a new joint commercial intent to move this forward. That's what I'm saying.
All right. So that's Bright Simmons there on the matter of the Black Volta gold. Of course, it includes a Sankofa, and not only that the agreement covers. This is all time will allow us for now. But as we have shared with you as well, engineers and planners in their statement are very clear that they have not done anything untoward, and that they have followed the process through and through up to this point, including, as I mentioned a while ago, that the states, Ghana, wanted through MIF to support engineers and planners in the raising of the financing. And they said, no, we are not interested. We don't want the government of Ghana to come into this business and to give us any trouble. And the loan process happened at an event where Sir Sam Jonah also had something to say. So let's hear him as we take a break.
Initiative by EMP gives strong credence to the government's commitment, not just in word, but in deed. Indeed, it is a practical expression of policy vision that seeks to anchor resource nationalism in indigenous entrepreneurship. Ladies and gentlemen, let us be clear. And I repeat, let us be clear. This is not a favor. There is no political patronage here. This is not crony capitalism. This is not about friends and family. The deal we are witnessing here today was actually initiated as far back as 2023, October, with no fanfare, no interference, and no backroom dealings. It is, in every sense of the word, a commercial transaction built on merit, backed by a strong balance sheet, and grounded in.
And that was the voice of Sam Jonah, who was at the signing ceremony for that loan. We're moving on to Ablekuma North, but just a couple of messages for you. Kwame says that for 20 years of receiving the concession, how much did Azuma pay to Ghana as taxes and royalties? They obviously could not honor obligations to even GRA. If government of Ghana has been patient and did not terminate with Azuma, how should they seek to terminate with EMP? How can Bright keep saying EMP did zero work? What work did Azuma do and have not even paid their taxes? someone has come along with sweat, financial and political clout to keep you going, and suddenly you want to kick them out because of gold price hikes. This is what we have allowed these foreigners to do to us for centuries. That's from Kwame. And Kojo says that the concession may cover 25% of the Upper West. How do we protect the interests of the indigenous owners of the land? They do not have the skills and the capacity. Sadly, the land acquisition process was also not transparent. Locals have basically been sacked from their ancestral lands without proper compensation. That's by Kojo. And a couple more questions. But of course, there are also messages you are raising about Bright and still questioning his interest. And it's interesting, and I must say this, that I'm receiving these messages practically from people who are associated with the NDC. This is the Bright that you loved all that period you were in opposition. But well, we are used to it. Same thing was done to him by the NPP. When they came into government, they said he was not as bright. But when they were in opposition, they loved him to bits. Let's do ethical politics. Thank you very much. Now, this show is brought to you by the candid sponsorship of Bank of Africa, as strong as a group and close as a partner. MTN, everywhere you go. Ashesi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. Robert & Sons Optical Services, your comprehensive eye care service provider for 31 plus years. DBS Industries, roofing, Papa Fie. And if you want to sign on to My Way Insurance, and you should, dial *165# on MTN to join My Way today. Flamingo Paints, simply superior. Syntax tanks, it's strong and it is tough. Thank you very much. My outfit is by Kunati Clothing. You can call Kunati Clothing on 0244 676732. 0244 676732 and make your orders now. My next set of guests joining us now, and Bright will also help us navigate the lessons we should learn and to avoid plunging this country into deeper trouble. Is our democracy on the brink from the things we're seeing from the political front with elections, people being killed. One election, 8 people die. Small 19 polling stations election rerun. Guess what? We are beating people as if we want to kill them. And you will see some of the footages shortly. Dennis Miracle Sabuaje is aide to Dr. Baumia. He was at one of the polling stations and we were told about how he had to run. Newsfile is member of the National Democratic Congress communication team. Professor Kwesiening is security analyst. And Suleiman Abrahima is Executive Director, Media Foundation for West Africa. Bryce Simmons, Honorary Vice President of Imani Africa, is still with us. Now, check some of the things that happened yesterday at Ablekuma North.
So what you can see here is that, yes. Now, how come is on the floor? That is what is happening here right now. That is what you can see inside. You can get a closer look. The doors are locked, but that is what you can see here. I want to... That is is what is happening right inside here at the... So that is some fight happening right inside here. That is what is happening here. So that is the fight, that is the chaos that is happening right inside your Doko Methodist Church. All we saw were that we saw some marksmen enter the premises.
Let's go. Where's your car? Let's go. Let's go to your car.
So, right, somehow I'll start with you first on this. What's wrong with us?
Well, there are a couple of issues. One, we have to recognize that this issue of political vigilantism is connected to some of these incidents that we regularly see. You have to bear in mind that when you have 19, I would say polling stations, I'm not sure whether in a situation like this is the right term to use, and you have the overwhelming force of lawful violence that the state can deploy. And yet still, it's very clear that the state was overpowered in a couple of seconds. And it becomes very clear to us that unless we go to the root cause of this problem, we should forget it. Think of it. You have, in a normal election, general election, you have almost 40,000 polling stations. If you put all the security agencies together, you struggle to get 100,000 that can be deployed during elections. So maximum maybe 2 per polling station or 2.3 per polling station, you are lucky. When you have over 20 security agents at the polling station, they are overwhelmed in an instant. What is 2 going to do if this was widespread? So that tells you that the security forces alone cannot enforce peace, which is why we have other institutions and we have an institutional framework in this country that was meant to deal with this. We culminated that in the famous Vigilantes and Related Offences Act, which I think was 2019. And in that act, the Minister of Justice and the Attorney General is given responsibility not only for enforcing the act, but for a range of other functions, including the ability to expand the list of prohibited activities within that context. Several civil society organizations pleaded with outgone Attorney General to craft a legislative instrument to deepen the implementation of that act. We got very little feedback. I think Codeo went on a whole campaign to try and push this. Very little feedback. We have a National Peace Council, which many people are not aware, but it's part of the institutional structure of this country. It's a public service. True, but it's a public service. What have they done since we implemented the disbandment of these 27 vigilante groups, political vigilante groups? After that disbandment exercise, what has been done from an intelligence gathering point of view, from a monitoring point of view? Because the truth is, it's not every political party member who does this. Each of the parties have about 3 million members. If they were all violent, this country would have collapsed. So it's a very small subset of hardened, actors who are often mobilized for their capacity to inflict violence.
Okay, hold on for me. Suleimana, thanks for joining us. Hello, Sule.
Yes, Samson.
Yes, I'm sure you may have a bigger interest in the journalist who got slapped, the lady from here, Joy News, and the other one from GH1. You can't understand why they were slapped. But beyond that, you saw how Akumsin, how she was pushed down. The guy who, I don't know whether he was flying, and, attacked her in such a way she fell. She tried to get up. There were people who were trying to even hit her. Then she was helped to get up. She fell again. And then eventually she was taken to the hospital. Then you have the NPP's, one of their officials, who, sensing that he was in danger, attempts to run away, attempts to escape or move away from these tags. Somebody hits him on the way, he falls to the ground. Someone runs from the back, comes and jumps high up to step on him, and he does. The others are hitting him on the floor, and you can see that, but for God, he would have been lynched.
Well, Samson, these are certainly very sad and unfortunate developments. It's sad because, we started seeing some of these things right from 1992, and 30 years on, despite reforms, despite improvements, despite what is supposed to be an advancement in terms of civilization and how we do things, we continue to see some of these actions. And that should tell everyone that we still have very fundamental problems to deal with in terms of our democracy. I think we keep talking about sometimes some of the high level or high end things, corruption, good governance, and so on. But even before we get there, I think that the attitudes of our people, the attitudes of our leaders, the attitudes of our organized groups, political parties, and so on, are issues that we have to look at quite critically. But beyond the violence that happened, and of course the violence happened because there was an occasion, there was an event that triggered all these. And this is about the rerun. And for me, I think what's important to talk about perhaps is what this rerun means for us as a nation, for our institutions, and for our democracy. And I think that if there is any doubt at all, yesterday's development, not just in terms of the incidents that happened, but the fact that we had to have this rerun, clearly points to a number of issues. And for me, I want to flag 4 of these. One is the competence and the independence of our electoral management body, the Electoral Commission. 2 is the independence of our police and other, state institutions that are supposed to be independent. The 3rd is the credibility of our political parties and our political leaders. And then the 4th issue that we should look at, I think, is what precedent that does this set for the future of our democracy.
Sule,
yes.
Hold on with these 4. I'm coming for you to develop them shortly. Professor Anyenini, is our democracy on the brink? Is this a picture perfect of what we are looking at if this is not nipped in the bud? Nipped in the bud, really how? From Talinsi in which year? From Ayawaso, which is even recent, and there was a report that asked that, the state should punish certain people. And we made a joke of it, that even the tags were bold enough to go to a courtroom and move a judge and manhandle people.
Well, our democracy is now on a knife's edge, driven by the increasing franchising of violence and the use of violence as a currency. So we are going nowhere. Promises will be made, statements will be issued. We will never be prepared because, similar to the Galamsey fight, we are only tinkering with what we see. And similar to Sule, I want to flag a couple of things. 1, who are those behind these men, bold, daring, convinced that they have godfathers and godmothers, so they are above the law?
Good question. Who are behind them?
Well, that's what I use for my consultancy, so I don't intend to say it here. But you and I know that we cannot go to town with cutlasses do the kung fu fighting, knock people down. 2 ministers, Defense and Interior, promised as yesterday that those who perpetrate these crimes will be arrested. It's more than 24 hours after we saw these videos. I don't know how many people have been arrested. Number 2 relates to the performance of the police. I agree, and I think it was the right call that the police did not go initially to the polling stations armed. Otherwise, we would be talking about shootings and deaths. But if you play the videos in slow motion, you would notice that particularly with the MPP official who was battered, that the response of the police was extraordinarily slow. Okay? So we need to look at police preparedness, intelligence, levels of response and reaction times, so that we can prevent some of these things. The third.
My production, sorry, we have shown these videos already. Can we stop showing them? I think they are not good. We can stop showing them for now. Yes, go on. I can't watch.
Well, we need to watch them. We need to imprint them on our minds to see the kinds of people that we have become because of the allure of getting access to people who are in power and the incentives that arise thereof for doing their dirty work. Samson, there's a direct positive correlation between the violence that we saw, those who organized them, and the benefits that they are receiving now as we speak. So this is not going to end today. Already, officials from the MPP are saying they are getting prepared. They will meet them wherever there's the next opportunity, similar to the NDC's statements when Ayawaso's Wagon happened. So we as citizens are caught in the middle. Okay?
Okay.
We do. And I think Bright's point that every single party has about 3 million people, supporters, and that those who are doing this are a few hardcore, and they realize their problem.
So it means we can really deal with them. Prof, hold on for me. Let me talk to the party reps in the studio, and then I'll come back to all of you guys again to see what we can do, what we should be doing. And sometimes it feels like one gets tired of this conversation, but even when we are talking about it, it's still going on. What if we stopped? Yes, Miracles. Why were you running where you were yesterday? It's a simple voting process. You are supposed to go and observe.
I actually wished I had a chance to run. With what transpired yesterday, I truly wish that there was an opportunity for me to run. But unfortunately, there was none. It was even much more riskier for me to have attempted to run at that point in time. Because I was standing right at the entrance with about 30 policemen. Indeed, at that police station, there were 60 policemen. And in the morning, I had been there, Hawa Kumsen, Dakwa Newman, the candidate herself, Samye Wuku, Mustafa Gbande, Akugan, we're all there. In fact, at some point, we were all having interviews together and having very good,
Yeah, I saw some of those lively chats.
Yes.
Mustafa Gbande with Hawa Kumsen. They were sharing jokes.
Yes.
Very nice.
We're all there. There was no incidents. In fact, even the turnout was slow. So for the 1 hour I spent there, you didn't even have more than 3 people walking in to come and vote. So it was people just standing idle and chit-chatting. And the police had just kept everybody out there at the entrance, with just a few people in there. We had an agent within the perimeter. So Hawa Kumsen, Dakwa Newman were standing far away somewhere. There's I don't know whether it's a mission house, and having their own conversations. And then I was granted an interview to the City TV crew. So I saw about 4 pickup trucks just stop in the middle of the road. Then the gentlemen got out of the car. And you could see they were armed. They didn't have covers to their faces. In fact, when I saw them, honestly, the interview was still even ongoing because people had just come and left in similar manner. Because usually, as the politicians come in, they come with, people. So I was even wondering who is coming next. Then they moved straight to the blockade that the police had. I mean, let me call them like a human formation that they had. I thought they would even stop and have a conversation with them. So a first policeman said, hey, stop. Then the first gentleman, he was in a camouflage jacket, hit him, he went back, he sat on the floor, then he broke through.
He hit the police?
Yes. So when he hit him, he sat on the floor and he broke through. Then the rest went, agog. So if you watch the video carefully, you'd realize that for the first 30 seconds, the police were not reacting. Because they themselves, they were trying to figure out what to do. Before at some point, after some had already gone in and were going after Hawa Kumsen, they tried to stop the rest. But even that, if you watch the video, you realize that they ran over them. It was a policeman who was standing right where I was, who grabbed me and said, Miracles, come this way. So it was actually Jackie, your reporter, that I would say saved me. Because Jackie was seated on a wall, on the fence wall reporting. And then your video guy, your camera guy was this way, also had his camera right on top of the wall, also shooting. I remember telling Jackie that she should be careful. Because the guys didn't seem to be locals. They didn't even seem to know the faces. And they didn't seem to care. So Jackie being on the wall, I use her as a shield because there's a billboard right where we're standing that came to the ground and then there were some cars parked. So actually, that is where I stood. So I was right there. All the videos you are seeing from where we shot, I was standing by the video guy, except that they couldn't make me out. Because I'm sure if they had made me out, I would not be here this morning. But Samson, why are we here? Look at the police at the entrance.
And if you had attempted to run,
they would have
the point is that it does look, from the incidents you see, it does look like people who attempted to run rather got attacked.
Yes. Because you see, the guys didn't know faces. So if you are running, then they assume you are part of their target. So it was, so look at the police, they are standing idle. They couldn't do anything initially. They couldn't initially. Until here where they tried to stop the guys, they ran over them. And you can see some of the police even moving around. See some standing up there doing videography. Right. You couldn't blame them. I think that, like Professor Enin said, the police were not armed. And basically, if they attempted to do anything, a lot of them could have been injured. But let me come to why we are even going through this. Samson, if there was even an incident at the polling station, I would be a bit more calmer. There was no incidents. There was nothing happening at the polling station the time these guys came in. In fact, they are the ones who came in and brought this. But the NDC are not learning. The reason why I'm saying they are not learning is this. There was Etiwa. There was Talensi. There was Akwetia. There was Triponi. And usually, I'm saying this to the Gen Zs and some of the people who are now following politics. And there was Ayawaso West. Today, when we speak about these things, everybody refers to Ayawaso West as if that was a first. And then as if it was something that came out of nowhere and the MPP brought it. Before Ayawaso West, there had been 4 bloodsheds. In fact, Talensi, there was an instruction by the National Security to stop every vehicle and search. Everybody on this call recollect. At some point, they found guns and ammunition in the vehicle of the national chairman then. To date, nothing happened. The women organizer of the National Democratic Congress in Etiwa drove through a group of MPP supporters. Some are maimed and incapacitated till today. Nothing happened. Akwetia, Honorable Damboche's vehicle was shot into. His driver was hit. He was rushed to the hospital fighting for his life. Baba Jamal, at that time, vehicles ran over people in Akwetia. Nothing was done about it. You see, it is as a result of some of these things that, for whatever reason, some of the political parties at the time, after Etiwa, decided to begin to take the protection of their own people into their hands.
Jambuadu made this point.
We cannot run away from that fact. We can't. We can't pretend that is. We cannot solve the problems if we don't go into these things. So if you recollect, something happened in Etiwa. Etiwa was the first time in the history of the MPP that we stood up for ourselves. And you recollect the famous Yachiro Mubibi Kitwebi. And then since Etiwa, the MPP began to protect ourselves. When we came into power, let's give some credit to the Nana Danko Ekufuado. Knowing very well that violence and electoral malfeasance and killing and all of that wasn't part of the MPP DNA, quickly mobilized all stakeholders to put together a law that would disband vigilantism. Let me tell you, as of 2019, that the anti-vigilantism law was passed, no political party had the kind of strength that the MPP had when it comes to what they did in Ablekuma North. No political party. We had the strength. We could do 3 times what they did in Ablekuma North as of 2019. But the president and the party then realized that that wasn't the way to go. Yes, we suffered it in 4 elections before we decided to own our own lives and our own protections. But they felt that it was time for us to put a stop to it.
But the president was handed an opportunity through the Westwagon Commission. And
even that still give Akufo-Addo some credit. Because for 4 by-elections where there were bloodshed, we never saw the kind of public inquiry and commission that we saw.
But the public inquiry must have a purpose.
I'm just making
whitewash it.
It wasn't entirely whitewash. Maybe you can raise that there are other aspects that has not been implemented. But people were held responsible. Colonel Epoku and co suffered consequences for the actions. So you can legitimately raise concerns about certain aspects, but we cannot run away from the fact that that was the first time in the history of this. And I'm saying this for the benefit of the young people who are only hearing Ayawaso West, Ayawaso West. I'm saying that before Ayawaso West, there was a Talensi, there was a Chiponi, there was a Tiwa, there was a Kwetia under an NDC government. That led to the MPP now starting to protect ourselves. Fast forward, the same MPP realized that no, this is not the way to go. Let's pass laws that will ensure that we did. And we passed the law to disband something that we were ahead of when it comes to, protecting or whatever you call it. But with what I saw with my eyes in Ablekuma, and with what I have seen public officials, including some judge, a cabinet minister, saying that they are now about to start, I think the MPP has legal committee, the MPP has elections committee, the MPP has communications committee. It is fair that the MPP quickly reorganizes itself and gets self-protection committee. Because you know why?
You are actually encouraging
because I was standing
the
there.
Rhetoric we have heard since yesterday by people, some of whom say they were in the invisible forces or whoever they are. You are encouraging that rhetoric.
So let me tell you why. 24 hours since this incident happened, we are yet to hear from our presidency. We are yet to hear from the president put up a simple tweet that...
It's not 24 hours yet.
It's 24 hours. This thing happened around 10 a.m. I was there. It's 24 hours. It's 11:31. The president is here to put up a simple tweet. Listen, I could have lost my life yesterday simply because we were going to vote. Because I had no protection. And you know why the MPP would need a protection committee? Because the police could not protect me. They ran and left me. I told you, I was standing by Jackie.
When you say protection committee, what are you talking about?
People to ensure that at the time this incident happened, there would be 10, 20 people standing behind me, holding me. I didn't have it. I didn't. And the MPP...
You're talking about tax.
I'm not saying that. I'm just telling you about protection. And I've given you history. You see, Samson, if we don't speak up about this matter, the manner in which it deserves, it will never be. You know why? If yesterday Sam George and co, who are cabinet ministers, who currently are saddled with the responsibility of our protection, had not made the kind of reckless comments he made, I would not be saying this, because I would have felt that we have a government that is concerned about what happened.
He was a victim.
Okay.
And no action was taken.
So there were victims in Talensi.
He, together with Hanabisu,
there were victims
expressing
their
pain.
There were victims in Talensi. There were victims in Chiponi. There were victims in Tiwa. There were victims in Akwetia whose family members are alive. All of them should speak like that. And all of them should decide to take vengeance. And then we'll continue and never end.
But if what they said, you fault them and you say it is wrong. Of course, in 2020, 8 people died. You should not be encouraging that kind of
I have just told you something that you are not listening to me. I have told you that what I saw yesterday should never recur. And that I could have lost my life. Let me probably put it this way. A bullet knows no political color. A bullet knows no political color. And in the midst of chaos, nobody is safe. Samson, the kind of videos you are seeing and what I saw, okay, you could send your own army and you could be a victim, you could fall because it's chaotic. You get what I'm saying? Yeah, okay. So it's not something that anybody...
Hold on for me. Yes.
Hold on, let me just
You hold on,
properly.
hold on.
If you let me learn properly,
You hold on.
Then you can go to I beg you. I mean,
okay.
it's fair.
Yeah.
Let me just learn properly. So, there are things that I think should be done. There is a law that speaks completely against what transpired yesterday. The police had a responsibility to enforce that law. They failed. There is a government who currently has a responsibility to ensure the safety of everybody. That government, as we speak this morning, has not spoken.
They have spoken. You want to hear from the president.
The government functionaries who have responsibilities of the states and are accountable to the state are making very reckless comments. I feel very unsafe.
I feel made very responsible comments. Shamima, who speaks for government, also said things condemned.
Did I lie about the government functionaries who made reckless statements? So let me make those ones. You can make the Omanebo Ames and Coos. Okay.
You are concluding.
So until they come forward and give some comfort and assurance to the people of this country, nobody is safe, including they themselves.
That's a true point. Yes, Newsfile.
Good morning to you. Good morning to your viewers. Good morning to the comrades who are watching. And my good people of Laura, good morning. I just want to begin by saying that yesterday's rerun was very critical to our democracy in order to avoid disenfranchising any more people in this country going forward. I want to congratulate the candidates who won. The NDC's candidate, Rabna Oben. She won by over 209 votes. Very, very critical, especially for such a coveted seat that has been known to be an NPP stronghold for quite a while.
Her opponent was known to have outdone her by over 400 votes. And she believes strongly that she just been, this is a re-rig, not rerun,
but
really.
Contended figures, I mean, if the Electoral Commission counted, I think when they counted, the MPP was leading with about 49 votes before the rerun. So I'm going by the figures given by the Electoral Commission, unless anyone wants to say that the Electoral Commission gave us wrong figures. The win in that constituency shows us clearly the confidence the Ghanaians have in the NDC government. In 2024, that confidence was very clear in the election results and in the parliamentary results. This is just an affirmation of that confidence, and we are truly grateful to the people of Ghana. It also shows the lack of trust, the lack of confidence in the NPP government and their abysmal 80 years governance of this country. The people of Ghana have spoken resoundingly, and we are very thankful for that mandate. Now, if in reference to the cases of chaos that were witnessed, especially against the journalists, it's deeply regrettable. It's unfortunate. These completely undermine our democracy. And you have heard from our General Secretary, who has said there is really no need to show the NPP any power.
You say especially the journalists, when those who were actually battered, who were at the point of near death, were officials of your opponents.
I sympathize with all of them, but I used to be a practicing journalist, and so it is not out of place for me to sympathize specifically with the journalists, because when I watch, I see myself in them. I could have been on the grounds. I have covered similar events in the past, and so I sympathize deeply with the journalists and anyone else who was caught in the crossfire. It is important to understand that regardless of the history of violence where our elections are concerned, and we have had violence for a very long time, it undermines it for all of us, not just one party, regardless of who did what their political affiliation is. Violence at any election event is regrettable, and I just want to put that out there. In order to solve the problem, we have to look at it holistically. Ablekuma North and the issues that happened yesterday cannot be looked at in a vacuum. It is not an isolated incidents of violence during our elections. We have had countless incidences. My colleague conveniently skipped the parts where we have been confronted by the Delta Force. We have been confronted. And he said they actually have an edge, you know, in protecting the ballot. I don't know what that means. Does it mean that they are ahead in vigilantism or whatever it is? Maybe you have to clarify that. But we have had terrible cases in this country where even vigilantes have barged into courts to free their so-called colleagues. When Ayawa's West Wuogon happened, there was a whole report, you alluded to that report. The government at the time, the NPP government, decided to choose and pick which parts of that report to implement. Don't forget that there are a lot of people who are in pain and aggrieved, not just from then. 2020, 2016, there have been so many incidences. In fact, President Mahama recently urged the IGP to fast-track the report on the deaths that occurred in 2020 and in 2024. People died. People were shot at.
Oh, what's the point? What's the point?
The point I am making is that yesterday's Ablekuma North elections, the violence experience did not come out of nowhere. We have had a history of violence in our elections, and we should be addressing that holistically. We should ground our argument in the history and in justice and in truth, because we have not had violence from one party. We have had violence from many. In fact, as far as I'm concerned, yesterday,
the accusing fingers are being pointed at the NDC, and if you follow, like he said, certain commentary after and certain commentary before,
I think the party general secretary has spoken. He also said the presidency hasn't commented. Well, the vice president commented. She's part of the presidency. You know, it has been very clear that the violence is regrettable. But I referred you to the number of people who have been aggrieved. Some of them may comment just because they are angry. And when they comment, you will hear their anger. You will hear the reservations that they have. Look, I think that going into future elections, there should be heightened security. Even certain individuals should not be allowed near polling stations.
Maybe that point, but as for heightened security, how else can you have it? Yesterday they were in their dozens.
Yes, they were, but it was unexpected, right? The situation still escalated to a point that is regrettable. So I think that maybe we can even screen certain people or everyone if that is feasible. Just
or if you don't belong to the constituency or you don't belong to the polling station, you are not given access.
Exactly. Just as we have people who are flight risks. In this country, we have people who are election risks. Such persons should not be allowed. In fact, as far as I'm concerned, certain persons should be banned from polling stations, especially polling stations where they have no business. If you are not a candidate and you are not a voter, what are you doing there?
Do you have an idea what is going to happen to those who committed these heinous acts? We can see them. They are on video. It's not difficult to identify them.
It's too early to say what will happen to them. There has to be an investigation into it. And then the recommendations of that investigation, our President, John Dramani Mahama, is a law-abiding man. He will follow to the letter the recommendations of the investigations. I believe that is what should be done. Oh. But while we are discussing that, we should ensure that we are looking at the situation in its entirety, not choosing specific incidences to look at, and then exaggerating those incidences to look like this comes from just one particular party.
All right.
We have had, in fact, we've had candidates shoot guns. We've had some of our comrades, their legs were amputated because of election violence. We've had people die from election violence. The point I'm making is that these persons, their families, their friends, they are watching, they experienced it, and you think when they get a chance, especially when they had no justice, when nobody was brought to book, you think they will not return that kind of anger. We need to ensure that we solve this problem once and for all, so you and I are safe when we go to any...
Will anything be done to the official who was justifying vote buying?
I need to understand the context in which he spoke. But I think we all agree that vote by
let's just play her quickly, and then you speak to that quickly. We go back to Suleimana and Kwesi. Let's hear.
All right, Honourable, there's been a couple of issues or concerns raised with regards to vote buying. I don't know if you've heard that your opponent, that's the MPP, they've raised concerns that they whenever their members come around to vote, they see the others pull them aside and all that. I don't know if you've heard that.
My dear, this is not news. I mean, every election there's a vote buying. I mean, so if we are buying votes, they should also buy their vote. I mean, we have members who traveled all the way from Kumasi and they have to come and vote. So if such people come, you have to give them TNT to go and vote. I don't think it's a vote buying. Are you guys? So if you think it's a vote buying, you to go and buy the vote. It's as simple as that.
But there are concerns that it could affect the integrity of the process. Are you
I mean, which one is integrity? If someone is loyal to you, why not? The person will vote for you. With or without money, the person should be able to vote for you. So I don't think it's going to, I mean, giving the person TNT. But this morning, I have to call a couple of people. I mean, I was at Mass TV the other day. I gave my numbers out. And people are in Kumasi, others, Takwa, and others who are in Eastern Ridge. So I told them when they come, they should call me so that I'll give them their TNT. And
all right. So, Bright, you were watching in disbelief. You're hearing this for the first time, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, is anything? Has anybody reprimanded her? Nothing been done? And to think that her vetting, she was giving a pass. They didn't do anything. That's the. Yeah, what do you say?
Was that too bright?
No, I was asking you, will anything happen to her?
It's too early for me to say if anything will happen to her. That will be determined by the president and probably the chief of staff. We will await their response to that. But I think that she confused a few things over there. It is clear that she had certain persons who had come out of station and she was trying to compensate them for their transportation. It is important to understand that the MPP at the same election was also accused of vote buying. So she was responding. And I want to just say that generally, buying votes is a conversation we all should have in this country, especially election financing, the campaign process, and the incentives that are given in the process of the election should be properly discussed by all of us so we understand the limits to which we can stick to.
Interesting. Sule, now let's hear you on your 4 points and how we can overcome some of these things. And I'll be frank with you that I'm surprised that Noah Falong is not as blunt as I expected her to do about this particular comment, because we have been with her in civil society where we have met CDD, we have all condemned these kind of commentary.
I did say we have to all discuss vote buying in our elections so all parties understand.
Do you condemn her for this? Do you condemn her for this comment? Because she's encouraging that.
I need to understand her comment better.
Should she be arrested? She should be arrested and be a subject of prosecution?
We haven't heard from the minister, Samson. It's impossible for me to sit here and call for the arrest of a minister whose perspective I haven't heard. Thank you.
Okay. Yes. Sule. Okay. Hello, Sule.
Siri was responding.
Okay, we have a problem with Sule's line. Professor Enin. Yes. What's our way out? Because, as you admit, the democracy is on a knife's edge. And do we all sit back and watch for the handful, as we can say, to plunge all of us into trouble?
Well, I think we'll continue doing what we do best, that is bringing the problems to the fore, analyzing it, and hopefully doing two more things. First, improving how the institutions that have been mandated to do certain things will act. Like this minister who is publicly saying she will buy votes and others should go and buy. I mean, look, this is not the president's business. There are institutions that must act automatically when laws and rules are flouted in this country. Okay? I mean, immediately the president intervenes, then what it means is that he's not giving the institutions the opportunity to function. And I think the institutional ethos is very key here, because it's clear that our institutions are not functioning as optimally as they ought to. First, in identifying where the tensions will be. Secondly, who the bad guys are. Because what we are seeing now, as I said earlier on, is the franchising of violence. Because if I understand Miracles very well, these guys didn't even know where they were and who were the people who were present. They had only been hired and ordered to create some mayhem. The second point relates to the nature of our political culture. And here I want to speak directly to the two party officials who are there. You know, when we have two political parties in which the citizenry expect to perform certain duties on behalf of the country, because these political parties come to us voluntarily to seek for our votes, then emotions cannot come in when they need to act on our behalf. So I disagree very strongly with Falang when she says that there was anger and therefore some of the commentary must be understood within that context. Those people who gave those commentaries, although they spoke in their individual capacities, are representatives now of the Republic of Ghana. So the international community sees them not as victims of XYZ by-election, but a minister of the Democratic Republic of Ghana. And that is the lens that they will be.
Well, what's your brief commentary about the Greater Accra Regional Minister Linda Oklu's comment on vote buying?
No, that's not acceptable. And I mean, if the electoral laws are that you cannot buy votes and you cannot incentivize people to come and vote, then the appropriate institution, I don't know whether it's the CID, must invite her for a conversation and apply the law. And I think when Falang says that she's waiting for the president or the chief of staff, it's not everything that the president must do. And that is why we have institutions. Okay, and this speaks to the issue also of political culture. And this goes to my brother, Miracles. Miracles, the establishment of party security groups will only worsen the situation. We've got to go back and create trust.
He says a committee, and what he's saying is subject to doing something about the situation, because it is when the impunity is not punished that it continues. And sometimes, Prophet, won't you admit that if they are this vulnerable, they need personal protection?
Samson, I don't want to go into the history because it's like dredging things up. But I will only say this. When they were in opposition prior to the 2016 elections, they brought in mercenaries from South Africa. Okay, that created all kinds of things. But let's not go there. I think both parties must begin the process of engaging the statutory security services. We have an election security task force. Let's engage them. Let's use the intelligence that we all have.
Thank you. Prof, hold on. I have Sule back. And Sule, we have the accusation, counter-accusation. The minority leader issued a statement yesterday pointing fingers at two individuals as being the ones who incited, directed, or ordered. This morning, I'm seeing a statement from, what's the name again? Mustafa Bande, who is the Deputy General Secretary of the NDC. And in his statement, it's titled Blatant False Accusations by Alexander Afenyo-Markin. And he says that he did not do any of the things that Afenyo-Markin claims he did. And then actually indicates, he says that the assertion by the minority leader is false, reckless, and politically motivated. Such conduct from a trained lawyer and senior member of the legislature reflects a disregard for truth and the ethical standards expected of public office holders. I was in the constituency as part of routine electoral monitoring, and though I was not at the polling station when the altercation involving the former MP and Minister Mavis Hawa-Kumsin broke out, I rushed there to assist interventions to de-escalate the situation when called upon. Contrary to the false narrative, I got my driver to take her to the hospital, and then he says a whole lot of things and also contemplating legal action. They say this, then there's a counter, and then after a week or two, we all go to sleep.
Well, Samson, I think that sometimes we need to go a little bit hard on our politicians. And I believe we are where we are because of the hypocrisy and the sometimes very, very dishonest positions taken by our politicians. Look, to be honest with you, if MPP was in power and this thing had happened, Miracle would have been saying what Noam Falun is saying. And if NDC remained in opposition, I'm sure no one would be basically the one saying what Miracles is saying in your studios this morning. People would say that, look, we've had the MPP for the first time, maybe this is for the first time maybe in 8 years, the MPP disagreeing with a position taken by, let's say, the EC. The same time, you can talk about the police. We've had the MPP justifying actions of the police all this while. Today, it is the NDC justifying the actions of the police and the fact that they were overwhelmed and so on and so forth. I think the situation where people or our politicians, for that matter, only criticize when they are victims and justify when they are the perpetrators has to stop. We cannot continue with this whole situation of, okay, we would do this, they would do that. We'll go, Cherepone and so on and so forth. I think we've come to a point where we say, look, we have to stop and build the nation. We cannot continue to be playing political chaskele with our security and with the safety of our country. But Samson, having said that, I think it's important to still go back to the fundamentals. We are where we are because I think the EC has basically demonstrated gross incompetence on this matter. All this while, we were told that, oh, he's left with 3. We just need police security. With the 3, it is done. We just need, and even in those updates, the EC continuously made it clear to us that, in fact, in terms of even the additional numbers they were getting, they were basically relying on, supply of scanned sheets or carbon copies from the MPP and the NDC folks who were there. What about the EC officials who were there, who conducted the elections, the persons that the EC recruited and trained on how to handle the elections? What happened? That all of a sudden the EC has now has to be dependent on the results from the MPP, results from the NDC. They add on this, they add on that, eventually tell us that it's left with 3. And then all of a sudden we go back to 19. So this whole thing about the credibility of the EC, as far as this matter is concerned, cannot be wished away and then we just focus on what happened yesterday. You and
I have been, because we've just run out of time, you and I have been on this vote buying issue for a long time. It's a crime, but of course, when it happens under elections situations, you need the fiat of the Attorney General to prosecute. And we know that the Attorneys General will not give a go-ahead for prosecution against their own. What do you think? What should we do now? Because people were committing assaults. I think what has to be done is to go along the lines of the bold statement that the president has made about resetting. And when we talk about resetting, it is not about basically doing some of the things that are easy to do. It is about taking the difficult decisions to end certain things and to begin certain things. Should the regional minister be arrested or invited to be answering questions by this time for what she said? Absolutely. Absolutely. If it's a crime, he has to face it. It doesn't. Crime knows no color. Crime knows no party. Crime knows no position. And therefore, if the president says he's resetting this country, I don't think that we can reset a country where people can commit certain offenses because they belong to a particular political party or government. And do you share in the view expressed by some that the development yesterday, they chip away from the groundswell of goodwill that the government has?
Well, I think what happened yesterday has happened. In terms of whether or not the president will lose some support or groundswell, as you call it, depends on the actions that are taken following what happened yesterday. Because, I mean, I don't think that what happened, I would say the president sanctioned that or maybe cabinet sanctioned that.
Okay,
it's about what the president or the leadership of our country
Thank you.
does.
I have just some 30 minutes left, 30 seconds left. Bright, what will you say in some 20 seconds about what should happen to avoid this?
It's our tendency to rush to create laws where we have no commitment to develop the policies that underpin the law. My analysis of institutional governance is that you move from politics or political objectives to policy. When the policy is granted, then you create a law. We rush all the way to create a vigilante law without the accompanying policies of what we actually do to dissolve. So you know what happened? The 27 group that we disbanded, a researcher is now saying the people have regrouped and they are now 72. There are now 72 vigilante groups in Ghana, despite the law. I call that catanomics, where there's a breakage between the politics, the policy making, and the law making. We need to integrate those things properly.
Okay. Yes, Newsfile.
I just wanted to mention that although we have referenced so many comments made by party persons who are members, and I should refer to what Professor Enin said, they are not government appointees, they are members of the party who are airing their grievances. There are persons directly working with government who have made very instructive comments that we should be referring to. We have the General Secretary, we have the Vice President.
My time is up. The closing jingle will be played on me right now.
And I just want to say, let's all exercise restraint and work towards a great...
You can assure Ghanaians that the people will be found out and punished.
Well, there are institutions that do these things. The police, SHRAD, the Electoral Commission.
The government can bring, government. You can bring pressure to bear on them.
All
yes,
these
Dennis.
institutions should work.
Samson, Sule is wrong. I don't condone violence. I have never, ever, in all the violence that has transpired, ever supported any of them. There's no record of
Dr. Bawumia gives a sense that if it's not punished,
yes,
but
that condition is important. I'm expecting the president not just to investigate, institute a commission of inquiry. The gentlemen who did that, we have their photos, we know their names, we know where they work in government. We'll supply it to the police and the government. We want to hear everybody speak.
Thank you very much. My guests have been Dennis Miracles Abuaje, aide to Dr. Bawumia. Noam Falong is a member of the NDC communication team. Professor Kwesi Ening is a security analyst. Suleiman Brahima is Executive Director, Media Foundation for West Africa. And Bryce Simmons is Honorary Vice President, Imani Africa. I'm Samson, Lardy, Anyenini. This has been Newsfile. Thank you very much for your company.